Happy New Year. It is the Awesemo NBA Deeper Dive. We gave Lofty a little bit of time off for the holiday. He had some stuff he wanted to do. He's probably drinking somewhere. That aside,
Some
though,
stuff you wanted to do.
yeah, some stuff he wanted to do. He's face up. He just fell off a bar stool somewhere. He's whatever. He's having a good time celebrating the holiday. I had no issue with it. They asked me, could you do the deeper dive instead? It was like, sure, I'll have my night end a little bit earlier before getting on to New Year's. But looking forward to it. Show sponsored by Yahoo, and another interesting 7-game slate for you and I to break down, Adam. And some stuff has changed since we did our NBA injury report video earlier. What stuff has changed over the course of the day that's going to impact the slate the most?
Kyle Lowry's in for Miami. I don't necessarily know how much that impacts the slate because we could still not have Jimmy Butler, in which case it's kind of just the same thing, but a little bit different names. But that's obviously a huge piece. We got confirmation that at least most of Toronto is back. Scotty Barnes is still questionable, so don't really know what his status is going to be. I think those are the two. Minnesota, everybody was ruled in. I think those were Jared Allen ruled in for Cleveland. I think that was it.
Yeah, it's a never-ending carousel. Also, Adam, I think your mic might not be on. Is that just me, Tyler, or is this also his audio sound a little wonky?
Oh yeah, my mic's not plugged in. That's
okay. Well, there we go. I was able to find it. What do we need a producer for? I could do it right from this spot. Tyler, I know that Tyler's wearing his captain hat, but it's all right. I've got this covered. We'll get right into the first game of the slate. It is the Miami Heat at the Houston Rockets, and talking about the Miami Heat, you just brought it up right there. Earlier in the day, we were expecting that there was going to be no Kyle Lowry for the Heat. It appeared that he was going to be out. Jimmy Butler still is questionable. They signed all of these 10-day contract players because they thought they were going to potentially be shorthanded today. So they have Haywood Highsmith, Chris Silva, Eric Holman, Nick Stauskas, Mario Chalmers, Kyle Guy, all on 10-day contracts. The players out for the Miami Heat: Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, Dwayne Dedman, Victor Oladipo, Udonis Haslem, Bam Adebayo, Marcus Garrett, Max Strus, Xylon Chetham. All right, that's a new name for me. KZ Okpala, Markieff Morris, PJ Tucker. What could we expect from the Miami Heat if Jimmy Butler is to sit?
If Jimmy Butler sits, I think it's kind of just what we talked about like earlier, where except you're just changing out Kyle Lowry for Jimmy Butler. Like if Butler is out, I think Lowry's going to look very good at, 8,800 on DraftKings. He'll look good. Still kind of expensive, but would likely play as many minutes as he can. His production would go up. Tyler Hero would still look fantastic at 7,200 on DraftKings and even less than that on FanDuel. Kyle Guy would still probably have to play a good amount. Caleb Martin would play a lot. Yurtseven would look good. So if Butler is out, I think it's kind of just the same thing where anybody who's been on Miami for longer than a week looks like a good play. And then also, you probably can add in like Kyle Guy is a good play as well.
And then if Jimmy Butler plays early in the day when there was no Kyle Lowry, when we thought there was going to be no Kyle Lowry before he tested back into the game, it looked like Jimmy Butler is going to be one of the, if not the top plays on the slate if there was no Kyle Lowry. How does the dynamic change if Jimmy Butler plays now that Kyle Lowry is also in?
I think that it would make it so basically I'm just interested in guys that have been on Miami for a week or more than a week. Like Lowry would still look good. Butler would still look really good. You lose a little bit in the way of assist opportunities, most likely for Butler with Lowry back, but he's still going to get plenty of production. Bam Adebayo is still out. He's been very, very good without him this year. Same thing can be said for Hero. Maybe, not quite as strong an option as he would be if both, or if one of Butler or Lowry were out, but still is going to look good and still need to play a ton of minutes. Caleb Martin's still going to need to play a ton. So it's a situation where, like, if Jimmy Butler plays and you're getting Lowry back, yeah, they're going to take some usage away from what it would have been, but there's still a ton of minutes available. And for the most part, outside of guys like Tyler Hero, most of these guys on Miami have no business being high usage guys anyway. So you're really just kind of taking some missed shots away from them.
There's kind of an interesting question in the YouTube chat, which I looked up just because I wasn't really sure. But Marcus Amparo asked, how much are the 10-day contracts worth? So I just looked it up right there. So I was still listening, but also I was looking it up because I was curious. So it depends on how much experience the players have in the league. So a lot of these guys have only been in the league for 1-2 years. So if you have 0 full years of NBA experience, the contracts are worth $46,000. If you have 10 or more years of experience, the contracts are worth $131,000. But for the most part, a lot of these guys are players without a full service year, 1 to 2 years in the NBA. So you're looking like 40 to 70,000 is the value of the contract, which it doesn't have any real impact on slate. I just kind of thought it was interesting, and I wanted to know the information there. But yeah, go ahead.
So the Celtics were just feeling really charitable when they could have signed literally anybody for like $60K, and instead they're throwing money at Joe Johnson and CJ Miles to not even play them.
Yeah, there was like an extra. Yeah, there was an extra couple $100,000 that they shelled out. Because they absolutely, they didn't. Was having Joe Johnson there for 2 minutes a game really that much more valuable than whatever else they would have had? No, but they want. And I also think there was a chance they thought maybe they could have used him long term, and then they didn't. So it just didn't end up working out that way. But anything else from the Heat here that you think is a good talking point or that is interesting from them?
Zach Jamison said, "Do you like Hero better with Lowry and no Butler, or Butler and no Lowry?" I don't think it makes a huge difference, but I'd prefer no Butler and Lowry, just because Lowry's not going to be as high a usage guy as Jimmy Butler, kind of regardless.
Yeah, and we've seen that a lot from Miami Kyle Lowry this year, is even in some games where players have been out, he kind of is an on-off switch. There's some games where he feels like they need him to score, and we've seen him take on higher usage. There's been games where there's a bunch of guys out where he only has like a 17-18% usage rate. If Jimmy Butler plays it, he's going to have a high usage rate. There's no doubt about it. There's not really a situation where a shorthanded Miami Heat, Jimmy Butler isn't going to be taking shots. So I do think that Tyler Hero would be better without Jimmy Butler than he would be without Kyle Lowry. But it seems that they're actually. Have we seen the updates on Jimmy Butler today?
I haven't. Just that he's still questionable.
Yeah. I think that he's probably a little more likely to sit than play, particularly with Kyle Lowry available now. And it's a really winnable game against the Houston Rockets. It's not a game where it's like, oh my God, Miami needs everybody. Houston loses to like everybody except for the Lakers by a considerable amount of points. So it's not like this is a team that the Heat need to be throwing everybody out at them. And on the Houston side of the game, we've got guys like Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green who are back in the fold for them. All things considered, this is a relatively healthy team versus what we normally see from teams at this current juncture from the NBA. I don't really see this as a team that I'm dying to target. I think Christian Wood is reasonably priced on FanDuel. The Heat defense probably a little less daunting than it normally is because of all these guys on 10-day contracts. But is there anything on the Heat that from the Rockets that really stands out to you against the Heat?
No, not really. And they're kind of interesting in tournaments because you could get a lot of minutes from these guys, but you also got Jayshawn Tate, who's now available. He was out earlier. You have KJ Martin Jr. back. So they ran an 8-man rotation, I think it was last game. Now I'm fully expecting them to go back to a 10-man. And so, somebody like Jalen Green at 4,900 certainly can still have a good game, especially, like if Jimmy Butler were to sit and you're getting an even weaker Miami team. But it's pretty far from a priority on a slate like this. Same can be said for guys like Christian Wood, Kevin Porter Jr. It's mostly just, kind of last piece in type guys in any individual lineup than anything that I'm prioritizing.
Yeah, and the other way I look at basically all of these teams now, we've got like half the teams in the league are missing half their roster. Those are the teams I want to target, not the teams like the Houston Rockets that are just getting players back from COVID protocol or Kevin Porter coming back from a thigh injury. I want to look at the teams that are shorthanded, not the teams that are slightly getting healthy. So if you had to roster one player on the team, was there any one guy that stands out, or is it just they're all somewhat fairly priced?
I think they're all pretty fairly priced. Jalen Green would, I guess, be where I go first just because he's the cheapest. He played 38 minutes last game. I'm not expecting 38 minutes again, but it's obviously just easier for somebody at 4,900 to do well than somebody playing similar minutes that's 3K more. Even, like Porter obviously gets more opportunities, for example, but he's not that much better of a fantasy point per minute guy. So I guess Green would be the first one.
All right, moving on to the Atlanta Hawks playing in Cleveland against a shorthanded Cavaliers team. And I think one thing that's kind of an interesting talking point when it comes to Trey Young is there is nobody left in the Cleveland backcourt that he's going up against, which makes him a little difficult to project for me because I'm not even sure that anything in terms of matchup that we've seen previous in the year from the defense of the Cleveland Cavaliers is all that relevant for today. Do you think Trey Young could be taking advantage of a shorthanded Cleveland backcourt, especially when there are some higher usage guys like Bogdan Bogdanovic, Kevin Huerter, Danilo Gallinari, and John Collins that are out for Atlanta?
Yeah, I think it's potentially a better matchup going up against Cleveland, but at the same time, they do have Jared Allen, they do have Evan Mobley. So, as far as team defense goes, those two should still be able to anchor it. But at the same time, Cleveland was throwing Pangos at Bradley Beal last night. That went horribly. But the bigger thing for me, the reason that I like Trey Young, doesn't really have too much to do with thinking that he's going to exploit Cleveland necessarily. It's looking at what he's done without Bogdan Bogdanovic and John Collins on the floor since last year. He's played almost 500 minutes, and over that time, he has a 40.8% usage rate and a 44.7% assist percentage. He's averaged about 1.5 fantasy points per minute, and you're likely to get 36 plus from him if this game's competitive. So I'm not in love with the spot, just especially with Jared Allen being back. I think that as their team defense should still be okay. If they insist on throwing Pangos at Trey Young, it's going to be ugly, but I don't know that they'll necessarily do that. But I just think Young could have so many opportunities here that I don't really care all that much about the efficiency.
And then one other question just related to Trey Young and the matchup and all that is, if you do look over at Odd Chopper right now, one of the best prop bets that we have for the day is Trey Young actually is a really high over-under for his points. It's 32.5. And we do like the under on that. I also have him projected to go under 32.5. I have him under 30. Does that number seem a little high to you? It was kind of jarring when I looked at it.
What was it?
32.5.
32.5. What for who? I missed who you were talking about.
For Trey Young, real life points.
I have him at 33.7.
Oh, okay. So that would be, you're a little over it. I'm a little under it. I'm pretty sure our projections are a little under it as well. So maybe better suited for a stay away. As for other guys on the Atlanta Hawks, Clint Capella is somewhat interesting to me because there is no John Collins on the court. Capella, we're kind of starting to see there being a little bit more of a leash for his minutes. They were really reserved with him earlier in the season. And then also with him coming back from COVID, I think they might have been a little bit more conservative. He played 30 minutes last game, but that was also a blowout. I think it's a game where he could have played well over 30 minutes. I think we're looking for a contrarian option at center. We could do worse than Clint Capella due to the shorthanded Atlanta Hawks front court. Do you have any opinion on him as a tournament option?
I like him as a tournament play because I think it's still going to be kind of difficult to get to him just in the context of the entire slate. There's going to be a lot of centers that you can get to. There pretty much always are. But, I'm with you. He played 30 minutes in 3 quarters. Now you're getting this really big Cleveland front court. As shorthanded as this team is, they still have Allen, they still have Love, they still have Mobley, they still have Markkanen. There's going to be no shortage of bigs out there for Clint Capella to defend. So he has about a 25% use or 25% rebounding percentage without John Collins on the floor. The usage is still an issue. I mean, Trey Young's just going to dominate there, but I think that you're likely to get mid-30s in minutes, and we know the type of ceiling Capella offers.
Frank Ntilikina was just ruled out. That's not going to affect the main slate, so we're not going to be talking about it here, but I just wanted to bring up that if you are playing any showdown or single game contest for that Dallas-Sacramento game, Ntilikina is not going to be playing today. As for some of the other wing or cheaper value options from Atlanta, we saw Skylar Mays start last game. Lou Williams is back in the mix. Cam Reddish has looked much improved over the last few weeks. Are there any of the role players for Atlanta that stand out to you today?
Not really. Skylar Mays at 3,800, I think, is a viable value option, but he's another one where, like, if you look at his overall numbers, he's around a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy. It doesn't matter who you take off the floor. If you put Trey Young on, Skylar Mays' usage rate just becomes like 10%. And so you're basically saying, okay, well, hopefully he's really efficient, or he, runs into some blocks and steals in 32 minutes or so of action. That's certainly possible at 3,800, but I don't expect him to really. I don't expect the plan to be for him to do much when he's on the floor.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then also we're getting some of these guys back from Atlanta that, like I mentioned there, Lou Williams. I mean, they've been starting Shondae Brown recently. So even just getting somebody like Lou Williams back in the mix, or Wes Iwundu, who was out recently, that is going to mix up some of the rotation. And it's going to be other minutes to give to other guys where they were playing a really condensed, shortened rotation as of late. On the other side of this game, the Cleveland Cavaliers, they are super shorthanded right now because they have no Chetty Osman. They have no Darius Garland. Colin Sexton's out for the year. Ricky Rubio was recently ruled out for the year. And we got a situation now with the Cleveland Cavaliers where they traded for Rajon Rondo because they are so shorthanded. And that led to a lot of debate last night when I was in Live for Lock, because I was just making fun of Rajon Rondo for being terrible. Adam, I need you to back me up and set the record straight. Rajon Rondo, quality NBA player at this point in his career, or no?
No. I mean, to be fair, I don't pay a lot of attention to actual NBA stuff, but I think it's pretty safe to say he's not. But he's still fine from a fantasy standpoint because he'll just get assists.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was saying too, is that if there's a situation where Rondo is starting a point guard for the Cleveland Cavaliers in the next week, and he's probably going to have a cheap price point, I'm rostering a ton of him. I don't care if I think he's a shitty NBA player or not necessarily the best teammate. That's something else some people are bringing up to me is that, what about Rajon Rondo in the locker room? A few years ago, he was on the Dallas Mavericks, and he was so bad, the players voted to not pay him his playoff share. And Rondo is just okay with it. And the team benched him. They made up an injury. They said he had a back injury and couldn't play. He had no injury at all. But they just wanted
about all of it.
Yeah, they wanted nothing to do with him. So the team voted to not. The players on the team voted, let's not pay this guy. And Rondo's like, yeah, that's fair. I probably don't deserve to be paid. I just punted a playoff game by not trying the entire time. So I don't know that he's the best locker room guy. And there's a point in time where Rondo is really good, but there's just kind of a disconnect, I think, where people are unable to see at a certain point the player he might have been really good. He just isn't anymore. And he was really good at one point. He was one of the premier point guards in the NBA. He's not that player anymore, but the Cleveland Cavaliers are shorthanded at point guard right now, which means they've got somebody like Kevin Pangos starting for them at point guard yesterday. And I wasn't all that familiar with Pangos until I was looking at the Cavaliers roster and trying to figure out minutes yesterday. I played a decent amount of Pangos. I think I'm going to go right back to the well again today.
Yeah, it's not with a lot of confidence, but he's only 3,500 on DraftKings. The thing that stood out to me is that, for one, they still don't have ball handlers. You bring Jarrett Allen back, but that's clearly not anybody running point. Unless they just say, screw it, we're just going to do something different. There's not really options to handle the ball outside of like Pangos and Nembhard. And they pretty much they came close to splitting 48 minutes yesterday. What stood out from that game is that even though he wasn't very productive from a fantasy standpoint, Pangos led the team with 12 potential assists in only 24 and a half minutes. Next highest was Evan Mobley with 6 in 32 minutes. So there wasn't really anyone competing with Pangos in terms of playmaking. He shot 1 for 8 from the field. He's not going to be a high usage guy. Had about a 17% usage rate last night. But that was also a game that blew out. Like, I think it's pretty likely if this game's competitive, you're getting 28 minutes or so, you're getting around the 17% usage rate, and you're probably getting the team leader in assists. So you shouldn't be overly confident in his production. But I also think that if you look at last night's game and just say, oh, this guy isn't contributing anything, I don't think that's really a fair takeaway either.
Yeah, and I mean, it's where else are these point guard minutes going? Here are the available guards for the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's RJ Nembhard. They've got Brian Goodwin on a 10-day contract. They've got Kevin Pangos, Isaac Okoro, who I don't really think is capable of playing point guard minutes. It's hard to know what to do there. So I just look at Pangos, assuming he starts and is going to be low owned, as a pretty good tournament option. Do I have the utmost confidence in somebody I didn't know existed a week ago? No, but he is a good opportunity, and sometimes that matters more than anything in NBA DFS. Looking at the guys in the front court, Kevin Love, Lauri Markkanen, Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley. What do you make of Kevin Love now that we have Jarrett Allen back in the mix? Because Love was a very appealing tournament option and cash option yesterday, and he performed pretty well. But now we've got Jarrett Allen back in the mix.
Yeah, so one thing to clarify, someone in chat said you would think Valentine would get some run at point, and they didn't even say him. Denzel Valentine no longer on the Cleveland Cavaliers, so that's why he wasn't mentioned.
He was traded for Rondo.
Yeah. I thought he was going to play like 22 minutes last night. They didn't play him because they were working on the Rondo trade. He's now no longer on the Cavs, so that's why he wasn't mentioned. As far as the front court goes here, I still think Kevin Love looks like a reasonable play. I expect 28 minutes or so. I'm guessing he goes back to the bench here, but that essentially he backs up Allen and Mobley. They just still need his usage out there. Jarrett Allen is going to play low 30s in minutes, but it's not like he's going to take a lot of shots either. So I think you're going to see Evan Mobley, and to a lesser extent Lauri Markkanen, really pick up the usage with the starting unit. Mobley had a 32% usage rate last night. Markkanen was at 22%. Even going back to his time in Chicago, one of Markkanen's issues has kind of always been that he's not aggressive enough even when he should be. And so that does make me think that it's likely you see Mobley continue to be the higher usage guy, but Markkanen, still should get a little bit more usage than normal. And then I think you're going to have Love still out there for 28 minutes or so. He had a 32% usage rate last night as well. He's one of the only actual high usage guys on this team. So I still think Love looks pretty good. I think Mobley looks very good at 7,600. Jarrett Allen, I don't know how you possibly get to him at 10.5 on DraftKings. If you can find a way, then good job, but I think that's a pretty insane price tag. But Mobley and Love look good. I think Markkanen looks like a good tournament play as long as the ownership's pretty low. And I feel the same way about Pangos and Okoro. Like, you're not going to get too excited about those guys, but they're also not pulling that much ownership.
Thank you for saying that you think Kevin Love plays around 28 minutes. Because my follow-up question was going to be, how many minutes do you think Kevin Love is going to play today? Because I've had no clue what to do with the minutes for the Cavaliers front court today. So that'll be a little bit of I think I'll give him like 26 minutes. just because I'm really not sure how those front court minutes shake up, especially with Jared Allen coming back from COVID.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. And like, I don't like 26, I guess, is reasonable too. It's just that Cleveland would still like to win this game. And unless it's like a physical issue for Love that they don't want, really don't want him to play 28 minutes instead of like 24 on the back-to-back, I can't imagine that they're willingly giving more minutes to like Dean Wade instead of Kevin Love.
Next game that we have here to talk about, it is the Los Angeles Clippers against the Toronto Raptors. And the Clippers are really decimated right now. They've got Nick Batum is out. Paul George is out. I'm not sure Paul George plays for the rest of the season. Torn UCL, that's something that in baseball leads to Tommy John surgery. If the Clippers are not super competitive over the next couple of months, I think there's a pretty good chance they shut down Paul George and Kawhi Leonard for the year. They've got Jay Scrubb out, Jason Preston out, Brandon Boston out, Ivica Zubac's out, Isaiah Hartenstein out. The reason that Isaiah Hartenstein and Ivica Zubac both being out is so crucial is because the Clippers are thin in the front court. So the available forwards for them, we're looking at like Justice Winslow, James Ennis, Marcus Morris, Serge Ibaka. I think Ibaka is going to have to play upwards of 30 minutes. And if that's the case, given his current salary on FanDuel and DK, I think that he's just a smash value play. Going to want to get on him in cash games, high priority for me in tournaments. Do you agree with me, or is there something I'm missing?
Sort of agree with you. I think he's one of the best values. I don't think he has to play north of 30 minutes.
No, I think upwards of 30 minutes. So I should have worded that wrong. I think that he is going to have to play significant minutes and could play up to 30.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Like I think 25, 26 is a very fair projection, but he certainly could play more. He started 3 games this year. He's only averaged 20 minutes per game, but that's also misleading because in 2 of those games, he played 26 and 29 minutes. If I remember right, he got hurt or something in the other one. I don't know. But he does have a couple of games with 26 and 29 minutes this year. With Marcus Morris being back, you could see some smaller lineups, but at the same time, Paul George is out. So you do still have, kind of shorter wing depth on the Clippers. I think that you also could just kind of potentially see more run if Jackson is out, because that would be just another body where the Clippers have to allocate their wings to these other positions. They are expected to have Wenyen Gabriel available tonight. That's someone that can jump in and pick up like 12 minutes at center too. But I think, at least expecting 25, 26 minutes somewhere in there for Ibaka is very, very reasonable. He's got power forward eligibility, which is extremely useful. He's only 3,200. So even kind of trying to lowball or not necessarily lowball, but be as realistic as I can with his minutes projection, he still looks like one of the best point per dollar values.
Yeah. And then let's talk a little bit about Reggie Jackson, because he's currently questionable and he's tested out of the health and safety protocols. He's no longer in it. He served his quarantine time, but he's still dealing with conditioning issues. So he's listed as questionable to play. If he's in, he's pretty expensive to me. I don't know that I'd have that much interest in. So I want to ask about what you feel about him if he plays. But is there anybody that benefits you to want to roster more if he ends up being out from the Clippers backcourt?
If he ends up being out, Eric Bledsoe's playing time looks a lot better. If Jackson's in, I'm guessing you're getting like upper 20s, 26 to 28, somewhere in there, minutes from Bledsoe. If Jackson's out, you can certainly get low to mid 30s. And then one other thing that stands out, I think Marcus Morris is a good play regardless, but without Paul George on the floor and with Reggie Jackson on the floor, Morris has about a 20.5% usage rate this year. Overall, without Paul George on the floor, Morris has like a 24% usage rate. So what that tells you is that when you take Jackson and George off, it kind of becomes the Marcus Morris show offensively. So I think he looks good regardless. He's coming off a game where he played like 38 minutes. But if Reggie Jackson's out, a lot of that usage can be expected to go to Marcus Morris.
Just kind of something else as one final note on Rajon Rondo, which I don't want to keep railing on, but I just thought this is funny. So Matty Joe posted in the YouTube chat, what are the chances that Rondo goes on the COVID list before he plays the game? He's on the COVID list right now, so 100%. He is going to be on the COVID list. He's on it right now. On the opposite side of the Clippers here, we've got the Toronto Raptors. Raptors getting a bunch of guys back. They've got Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, Kem Birch, Precious Achiuwa, and Delano Banton are all expected to be active today. We've got Scotty Barnes is questionable to play. He was dealing with some knee soreness. It wasn't COVID related. What do you make of the Raptors situation? To me, it's a little bit of a mess with all these guys coming back at the same time.
Yeah, I kind of like it because I don't have to say a lot about it. It's especially because like these guys are priced up too. It's not like you're getting Van Vliet coming back at 7K or something. He's 9,800 on DraftKings. Siakam's 9,300 and only a center. Barnes is 8,700. I mean, you kind of need guys to be out for anyone here to look really good. Even if you assume that Van Vliet's coming back and playing like 36 to 38 minutes, it's tough to prioritize him. It's tough to get to Siakam, Barnes, and Anunoby. The only thing that I kind of see from Toronto is Gary Trent Jr. at 5,900 on DraftKings. He could easily play 38 minutes or so here, and 38 minutes at 5,900 is always or almost always going to be somewhat appealing. But even then, it just looks like a secondary play at best.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody who, other than if I just have some of these guys pop up in a lineup here or there because the pricing fits. Okay, I don't even think I'm gonna have anybody on the Raptors in more than 5% of my lineups, and that might even be a number too high. There's nothing here that I really find that interesting.
No, me neither. I think we're going to see a lot of this in the coming days or weeks, where we start to miss all of these slates where you have like 100 good value plays, because it's going to really quickly turn into there being like no good value at all.
You know what's going to happen? And this is just totally piggybacking what you said. We're going to go from slates where it's like 400 fantasy points to win GPPs on DraftKings and FanDuel to be like it's like 290 points to win 2 weeks from now, because every player.
We're going to go from like we could easily do shows right now for like 2 hours just talking about all of the good plays. We're going to get to where it's like a 13 game slate and it takes us 25 minutes to do a show, because it's just like, yeah, there's this guy here and nothing else, and move on.
Yeah, because it's going to be like, oh, look, people are back for the Clippers and Reggie Jackson's 8,800.
Right.
He's of no interest to anybody at all. So we are going to be getting quite a lot of those situations. And a team that's not quite there yet, but is probably a few games away from it, is the San Antonio Spurs, because they still have DeJounte Murray out. He's expected to miss the next couple of games unless he tests back in at some point before then. But as long as he's out, Derek White is somebody I continue to have interest in. And we look at the recent games for the San Antonio Spurs, and it's been some spots where games have been so one-sided that we haven't gotten the extended minutes out of them. So last game they played the Utah Jazz, they lost by 6. Massive fantasy game for Derek White that time out. 21 points, 8 assists. He scores over 40 DraftKings points. The game before that, 144-109 against Detroit. They beat the Lakers 138-110. They beat the Clippers 116-92. We haven't really seen extended minutes for the most part for Derek White without DeJounte Murray, because the games haven't been competitive. I like getting to Derek White here. How about you?
Yeah, so do I. He is getting tons of ownership at like 32% on DraftKings. Anytime somebody in this price range is pulling 32% ownership, well, I shouldn't say anytime. Most times somebody in this price range is pulling 32% ownership. I think it's a reasonable spot to look to pivot away from in tournaments, just because there's going to be an abundance of other guys that are capable of scoring 40 to 50 fantasy points. But he does project as one of the most likely to succeed in this price range. He's only played the 2 games without Murray, 21.6% usage rate, 42.6% assist percentage. I think he's likely to play 36 minutes or so if this game's competitive. He's just pretty clearly underpriced.
Yeah, and cash games, no brainer. I think get exposure to Derek White in cash games. Tournaments, I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to be at, but he's going to be in a significant portion of my lineups. Not sure where that ultimately ends up being over underweight to the field. It's going to depend on some of these other guys that are ruled in, ruled out. There'll be more information on that in Live Before Lock, which is coming up after the show, and we'll need some more injury information. Also, do us a favor, guys, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you know when all of our content is going live. As for the other guys on the Spurs, there isn't any one player that really stands out to me outside of Derek White. Is there any value piece I'm missing out on here?
There's a few other pieces that I'm interested in. Keldon Johnson played 34 and a half minutes last game, would have played more if the game were competitive. I think you could get 36 or so from him here. Just, he's getting ownership. He's 17%. I think that makes sense. Same goes for Lonnie Walker at 11%, Devin Vassell at 9%. You're likely to get 26 to 28 minutes from those guys. One guy that I do want to point out individually, though, is Jakku Portal at 6,100. This is a spot where, it wouldn't be surprising at all to get like 30 to 32 minutes from him going up against the Steven Adams-led Memphis frontcourt. But he's someone that actually can really benefit from DeJounte Murray not being on the floor, because Pirtle is a capable passer. Obviously, he can rebound. He's, an upper teens usage guy. DeJounte Murray, when he's not that high of a usage guy, given how well he performs, he's like 25 to 26%, but he has a 12% rebounding percentage. He gets a lot of assists. All 3 of those rates go up for Jakku Portal without Murray on the floor. He's played 165 minutes without Murray this year. Usage rate goes up to 20.1%. Assist percentage goes up to 18.5%. Rebounding percentage goes up to 17.5%. Those are all like 2-point bumps across the board. So he goes from 1.05 DraftKings points per minute with Murray on to 1.12 with him off. I think that, he's getting 12% ownership, which is not nothing, but I think he's going a little bit overlooked here.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable enough shout out. And the other thing too, when you look at the Memphis side of the game, is Memphis does play some bigger lineups, and that's something that could encourage more minutes for Jakku Portal. When you got guys like Jaron Jackson Jr., Steven Adams, Brandon Clark is healthy now. So certainly some opportunity there for them to just have to play more to match up. But now on the Memphis side, I love getting to Ja Morant also. And I think I was a little bit too low on Morant earlier in the year. I didn't quite buy into the breakout. I'm all the way there now. And also, we haven't seen Morant priced up to quite the same levels that he was earlier in the season. I get that he's gone up in price, but earlier in the year, he was a guy that was starting to get, well over the 10,000 price tag. How do you view Morant as a pay-up option?
I absolutely love Ja Morant here. He's only 9,600, so it's not even like it's that much of a pay-up option, especially on a slate like this where you're still going to have a lot of really good cheap plays. Like to put it in context, I really like Trey Young, but Ja Morant is almost $2,000 less expensive on DraftKings. Morant, at the beginning of the year, the time frame where you're saying that you weren't totally buying into him yet, that was before Dillon Brooks had come back. And so you got like a 33, almost 34% usage rate in those games from Ja Morant. He has a 34.9% assist percentage in the games without Dillon Brooks this year as well. He played about 36 minutes last game, and you have a very short-handed Memphis team here. So not that Ja Morant is going to lose minutes to anyone on this team anyway when he's fully healthy, but it helps to solidify the playing time for all these guys even more. Morant's one of my favorite plays across the board on this slate.
And the total list of players that are out for the Memphis Grizzlies right now, of ones that are actually in the rotation, I'll skip on some of the other guys, but Zaire Williams, DeAnthony Melton, John Conchar, Xavier Tillman, Dillon Brooks in the health and safety protocols. Does that make any of these wing or players who are outside of Ja Morant look interesting to you?
Yeah, kind of the whole team. So Morant's the only one that I think really looks like a major priority in the context of all of the options on this slate. But Jaron Jackson Jr., if he can avoid foul trouble, is likely to play, low to mid 30s. He's got a 25.7% usage rate in the games he's played with Morant and without Brooks. Bane has a 23.6% usage rate. He's likely to give you 36 minutes or so. Steven Adams probably plays 28 to 30 minutes. Kyle Anderson should start and play low 30s again. He's around a point per minute guy. Even Brandon Clark off the bench, you don't have Xavier Tillman tonight. So chances are, basically you're seeing Clark be the backup to Steven Adams, which typically is going to mean 18 to 20 minutes. But there's no Tillman, no Zaire Williams, no Conchar. Aldama's questionable. You could easily get a couple minutes alongside Steven Adams for Clark, which would bring him up to 22 to 24 and make him look decent at 3,600. So I think Morant's the priority, but mixing in any of Jackson, Bane, Adams, Anderson, Clark makes sense. I would still say I don't want Adams and Clark together, just because the true ceiling for Clark comes with Adams foul trouble or something. But there's a lot to get to for Memphis.
I want to also talk a little bit more about Jaron Jackson Jr., just because he's really struggled since Ja Morant came back, which to an extent makes sense, right? There's just less usage available for Jaron Jackson in games with Ja Morant, but he was so good without him. I still think that the Triple J is a super, super talented basketball player, and I like the upside on him really whenever he isn't going to be massively popular. And just bringing up the most recent ownership projections, and I'll refresh to make sure I'm looking at the most recent ones. But we've got Jaron Jackson Jr. projected for 15% ownership at 6,600 on DK. Over on FanDuel, he is 6,700 and projected for 18% ownership. At this same salary 2 weeks ago, he was like a 50% owned player. I still like getting Jaron Jackson. The floor is not the same with Morant there, but I think the ceiling remains the same. So Triple J is actually somebody who I do really like quite a bit for tournaments.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, like I'd mentioned before, we do have I think it's 15, 16 game sample of Dillon Brooks being out with Morant in. And Jackson has nearly a 26% usage rate and a 10.8% rebounding percentage in those games.
Yeah, so Triple J, that is somebody who I certainly like as a tournament option. I think we've pretty much talked about everybody here from Memphis, but it is a pivotal team. Anything else that we should be mentioning here?
No, that's it for me.
Okay, today's show is sponsored by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. If you guys have not checked it out yet, over on Yahoo, we've got a great partnership with them. You sign up for the first time using the link in the description box below, make a deposit, enter a contest. You get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, which will do a couple of things for you. Number one, you keep Terry in business. I see that Terry's in the YouTube chat right now. This is how we keep Terry busy. People sign up for Yahoo, and then they have to go bug him to set up their subscriptions and whatnot. Keep Terry in business. You want to sign up for Yahoo. Give Terry some work to do. Also, We have all the tools that we have for DraftKings, FanDuel. We have them for Yahoo also. Ownership projections, player projections, all of that. We've got all of our great tools that are viable for Yahoo. Also, even if you're signing up just for Yahoo, you still get those tools for FanDuel and DraftKings as well. Also, if you're signing up right now using the promo code Yahoo10, you get a $10 in credit and then an additional, you get a $10 in credit plus an additional $25 using that promo code Yahoo10. Also, these contests they're running on Yahoo every Sunday for football. Best contests in all of DFS. And I'm not just saying that because they're the sponsor. They actually are. There is no other site that's giving away $200,000 in overlay every Sunday. Guaranteed overlay. It's something you guys should be checking out and taking advantage of. One of the first places you guys should be entering your Sunday NFL DFS contests. All right, moving on to the next game on the slate. And what order did I write them down? As if I wrote them down. I just copied and pasted what Josh wrote earlier, if I'm being honest, because I don't, what am I going to do? I'm going to look up all these games myself, save myself some time. New York Knicks at the Oklahoma City Thunder. And starting with the New York Knicks, the only player left on the team who had not yet had COVID was Julius Randle. Julius Randle now has COVID. He is out in the health and safety protocols. The number one player that stands out for me for the Knicks with Julius Randle out is Obi Toppin. I think he's fairly likely to start today. He's going to play extended minutes. That's really the only thing we haven't seen from him. When he's been on the court, he's shown to be a good points per minute fantasy producer this year. But now we're finally going to start to get the extended minutes. So how do you feel about Toppin today?
Yeah, I think he looks like a good value. You know, you can say this is another example of someone, you can say what you want about him as an NBA player, prospect, or whatever, but he's never really had an issue contributing on a point per dollar basis from a fantasy standpoint. And assuming he starts, I'm expecting him to get at least like 26 to 28 minutes. I don't really feel comfortable just like plugging him into, Randall's 38 or anything, especially in a matchup against OKC where you could very easily just play a small 1-4 and it wouldn't matter at all. So, but even if you give him like 26 minutes and try and use like the lowest rates that you can kind of find based on different samples since last year, he still looks like a point per minute guy or close to it and looks like a very good value at 3,900.
And he's not that popular. So when I'm first looking at the slate and I'm looking no Julius Randle, I just assume like, okay, Obi Toppin, there's a chalk play on the slate. 19.5% owned on DraftKings. I'm certainly going to be overweight to that number. I think that even if you're being conservative with his minutes, he warrants more than 19.5% ownership. Do you think that is a number you'll be overweight to?
I probably, I think it's very reasonable. There's just like enough other value options too that, without having built yet, I don't really know, but we have him with a 20% chance of being optimal, 19.5% ownership. So typically means I'm going to get at least around the field.
Fair enough. And we do have another piece of, well, at least potential value taken off the board. Jimmy Butler will play today. Jimmy Butler talked about earlier in the day that he was questionable. Kyle Lowry was expected to be out. Now we've got Kyle Lowry in, Jimmy Butler in. We talked about it earlier if anybody wants to rewind and see what we said about the Miami Heat, but just any quick reactions to Jimmy Butler being in, Adam?
Looks fantastic.
Yeah, there's still a lot of guys out for the Heat. And just to circle back and talk about the Heat's injury report, even with Jimmy Butler playing, they're still missing Gabe Vincent, Dwayne Dedmon, Duncan Robinson, Udonis Haslem, which whatever, it doesn't matter that much. But Bam Adebayo, Max Strus, Markieff Morris, PJ Tucker, KZ Okpala. This is a very shorthanded Miami Heat team. I thought Jimmy Butler was going to end up sitting today. That is not the case. Jimmy Butler is going to be in. Getting back to the New York Knicks, Evan Fournier still listed as questionable in the injury report. Which of the guards benefit the most from New York if there's no Evan Fournier?
Emmanuel Quickly, probably. So like, I think Kemba benefits one way or the other. I think he looks good with Randle out because not that you're necessarily going to get a lot more usage from him, although you certainly could, but you have to keep in mind that Julius Randle has the highest assist percentage on this team outside of Derrick Rose. And a lot of that is going to go to Kemba Walker as well. So Kemba is going to look fine with or without Fournier. If Fournier is out, though, it opens the door for Quickly to play big minutes again. I think it's likely that you would get Quentin Grimes getting the spot start again like he did last time, but Grimes basically just opened the game, opened the second half, never came back in either half. That opened the door for Quickly to close the first half alongside Kemba Walker. He closed the second half, the whole second unit just stayed in. But I think that it's likely, especially if Fournier is out, that you're getting 26 to 28 minutes or so at least from Quickly. If Fournier is in, you can still get that potentially, but it just becomes a lot more difficult to count on that. And similarly, if Fournier is out, Alec Burks, I think he can play 30 plus minutes with or without Fournier, but I think that if Fournier is out, it just makes it even more likely.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing to talk about from the Knicks too is this is not the typical Tom Thibodeau rotation. Remember last year, years before, we were seeing Thibodeau was just grinding his starters 40 minutes, 36, 30 minutes every single night. That's not the case anymore. The minutes are a little bit more spread out. And we've seen guys like Evan Fournier, Alec Burks, even when some of these guys are starting at times, they're not playing massive minutes unless they are, playing just out of their mind. And then it's more reasonable. This isn't just Tibbs guys starting for Tibbs. He's going to play bigger minutes. And the Knicks are still missing a lot of guys, but they still have a big enough rotation that I don't think there's anybody who's going to be playing massive minutes here. If Fournier's in, are any of these guards priority plays for you or just kind of like flyers for tournaments?
Yeah, just kind of guys that are there. Like, for example, I think Derek White is more likely to succeed than Kemba Walker for $200 less. I also think Kemba Walker has like an identical ceiling. So like the ceiling is just as high. Nobody's going to be shocked if Derek White goes for 50. Nobody's going to be shocked if Kemba goes for 50. So that's, one spot where, I said there's always just going to be guys around him that you can get to. Kemba's certainly one of those guys. But yeah, I wouldn't say priorities. Like I expect him to be my highest owned players or anything.
And on the other side of the game, they're playing the Oklahoma City Thunder. We've got SGA questionable, Kenrich Williams questionable. Now, last night, SGA, an unexpected late scratch. We had no clue whatsoever that he was potentially not going to be playing. He ends up sitting that game, and Ty Jerome just goes off and has one of the better games of his career, if not the best game of his career, and was an excellent tournament pivot for late swap, or 2 nights ago. Ended up being an excellent pivot for late swap purposes. Ends up playing 35 and a half minutes, 24 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. What could we expect from Ty Jerome today if SGA doesn't play?
I think more of the same. I mean, there's no guarantee he starts, but if SGA is out, I assume he's going to. He's only 4K. He's a decent fantasy producer, especially when you get him without Gilgeous-Alexander on the floor. So he would, if he's starting and Gilgeous-Alexander's out, then he looks pretty good again. So far this season, Jerome has played 269 minutes without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's averaged 0.94 DraftKings points per minute over that time.
Yeah, and he's also, reasonably priced. We've got Ty Jerome is 4,000 on DK, on FanDuel. Ty Jerome's salary, actually, Ty Jerome has gotten up to 6,000 on FanDuel. That kind of slipped through the cracks for me. 6,000 on FanDuel. Do you still consider that to be a playable price point if there's no SGA?
It's pretty tough.
Yeah, it's certainly not 4,000. That's for sure. There's a pretty big difference between the two. I expect that I'd have Ty Jerome projected for something like mid to high 20s fantasy points. I think that's where I ended up having him the other day when SGA was out. I was just doing whatever I could to get Ty Jerome in just because it was a late swap option that nobody was going to be on with some upside. 6,000 on FanDuel, that's a little bit of a thinner play. 4,000 on DK would still be a really strong value option. If SGA is in, is he somebody you think you'd have interest in getting to?
Yeah, I think he would look pretty good. I still would prefer John Morant in that price range, but Gilgeous-Alexander would look good as well. Josh and I were talking about it a bit this morning. If you go back to the start of last season and look at Gilgeous-Alexander's numbers without Josh Giddey on the floor, obviously Giddey wasn't on the team last year, but if you look at his numbers without Giddey and Horford, he has about a 32% usage rate, a 31% assist percentage. If you look at his numbers this year without Giddey, he still has a 31% assist percentage, but that usage rate's up to 36%. And so on the one hand, I don't totally buy into it. But on the other hand, you're talking about 400 plus minutes. So I think there is a good chance that it's just as simple as SGA saying, okay, well, I'm just going to shoot the ball more now. Like, I'm the best player on this team. It's not close. I'm going to take more shots. And, he has a massive usage rate without Josh Giddey. So even if you call it 32%, the 32% from last year, and then you account for the assist bump that he gets without Giddey, he looks good. If you totally buy into, what he's done without him this year, he looks even better.
And also, there are some other players that are missing for the Oklahoma City Thunder. There's no Trey Mann, no Josh Giddey mentioned. Darius Baisley's out. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl is out. Kenrich Williams being questionable. If he's ruled out, I think that could be a little bit more impactful than people realize just because the Thunder do not have that many quality bodies to throw out on the court. If Kenrich Williams is out, which of these cheap guys do you think are worthy flyers?
I don't think it matters too much because they did get Pokusevski back. So I think you would just see him soak up some of those minutes. Like Kenrich Williams played 6 minutes last game. So I don't think anything would be drastically different from last game other than you're getting Pokusevski back. Like you would still, if SGA is out and Williams is out, I would think you're still getting, enough minutes from like Aaron Wiggins to be decent. Paul Watson probably plays a lot, but I don't think that there's anybody else that is like coming out of nowhere to look good if Kenrich Williams is out.
Yeah, last game was also, if I remember correctly, Kenrich Williams got hurt during the game. So it's not like he was only going to play 6 minutes.
Right.
He played 6 minutes because of the injury. And we ended up getting 38 minutes out of Aaron Wiggins, which is compacting things. There was no Kenrich Williams, and there was also no SGA because he got rolled out before. So Aaron Wiggins would be the cheapest guy, would be the cheap guy that's appealing to me outside of Ty Jerome if there is no Kenrich Williams or SGA.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only issue is that Wiggins is absolutely awful from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah, he is. Let me pull up his rates right now.
I think he's like 0.58 or something on DraftKings.
Yeah, he is playing.
No, he's actually at 0.67 this year on DraftKings. What about with Gilgeous-Alexander on?
18 and a half minutes per game this year for Wiggins, 12.34 DraftKings points. So certainly the points per minute production, not ideal, but what is the numbers looking like with SGA on off?
That doesn't really change. He's at 0.7 with SGA on, 0.67 overall.
Well, there is no situation apparently where Aaron Wiggins is going to be lighting the world on fire. So take that for what it's worth. Minutes are still king. So if there is no Kenrich Williams or SGA, I'd still want to get to Aaron Wiggins just because I'd assume he probably plays mid to upper 30s minutes after what we saw last game.
Yep.
And also, the last game was a blowout, and he still ended up playing later minutes. So chance for him to play garbage time as well. Anything else from the Thunder that we should be bringing up here?
No, I think that's it. Definitely some. Lou Dort, if SGA is out, his usage rate kind of just skyrockets. You still deal with efficiency issues because it's still Lou Dort. But without SGA on the floor this year, Dort's played 219 minutes, has a 25.4% usage rate. Again, only 0.8 DraftKings points per minute because that comes with a 45% true shooting percentage. But his ceiling does jump pretty drastically if SGA does not play.
Next game to talk about here, it is the Minnesota Timberwolves at the Utah Jazz. And I think there are some pretty interesting talking points here because the Timberwolves are still missing D'Angelo Russell. They're still missing Karl-Anthony Towns, but Anthony Edwards is back today. He's tested in. His conditioning's all good. He's going to play today. Potential for blowout against Utah. Also a brutally difficult matchup, but all of the usage in the world for Anthony Edwards. He might take a gazillion shots today. I think every single time they're on offense, we might see one of the higher expected usage rates of the entire season. Not in terms of what the actual results are going to be, but in terms of if you had to look at any individual player in their situation going into a game, there's not many players I would expect a higher usage rating from entering game outside of what we have from Anthony Edwards today. But what are you going to do with him from a DFS standpoint?
I'm really interested in him because he's not getting a lot of ownership either. On DraftKings right now, we have him at 13.7%. He has shooting guard and small forward eligibility. He's only 7,800. I'm going under the assumption that the conditioning is good and that you're going to get a bunch of minutes from Edwards. He's played 100 minutes without Towns or Russell on the floor this year. 38.9% usage rate, 19.6% assist percentage. Like you said, efficiency could be an issue, but if you're going to give me a guy with close to a 40% usage rate at $7,800 and tell me that 88% of the field isn't going to roster him, I'll go ahead and take my chances that he makes some shots.
Yeah, and that to me is really the key because I'm looking at this situation and we have to project Anthony Edwards for a lot of usage. Even when Karl-Anthony Towns is on the court, there are times where if you watch Minnesota Timberwolves games where Anthony Edwards touched the ball, Karl-Anthony Towns just starts walking back on defense because I'm not going to touch the ball in this possession. This is Anthony Edwards has the ball. He's going to be shooting here. And now you don't even have those guys on the court. So it's like, who's he competing with for usage? Malik Beasley could be a high usage guy at times. Patrick Beverley doesn't take a lot of shots. McDaniels, Vanderbilt, Nathan Knight, Naz Reid. These are just not high usage guys. All the shots are going to funnel to Anthony Edwards. I think there's opportunities for other guys, but Edwards is going to take as many shots as he could handle. Patrick Beverley, Malik Beasley, do any of these cheaper guards stand out to you today?
Not as priorities. I do have some interest in Beverley at 5,200 just because he's been a solid fantasy producer this year. He piles up assist numbers. He's only played 62 minutes without Russell and Towns, but overall this season, he's not someone that you're really worried about the usage anyway. Overall this season, Beverley's at 0.94 DraftKings points per minute with a 24.9% assist percentage. I do think at 5,200 he offers some value. Beasley, whatever, he can get hot, but doesn't look great to me here. Edwards is the number one guy for me from Minnesota, then Beverley, then taking shots at Vanderbilt and whoever starts at center.
By the way, the chat is not liking Anthony Edwards, which is more reason for me to want to play him today because I just don't think
normally they love Anthony Edwards.
But I think people just look at the matchup against the Utah Jazz and say don't want to play players against the Jazz. But there is no D'Angelo Russell or Karl Anthony Towns today. This isn't a situation where I'm looking to be like, oh, great matchup for Anthony Edwards. Nor am I saying he's the highest priority play on the slate for me. He's just too low owned given the opportunity he has. If this game is remotely competitive, it doesn't get there unless Anthony Edwards scores a bunch of points. And somebody said in the chat, what if the Timberwolves only score 60 points against the Jazz? So then Anthony Edwards scores like 40 of them. That's one of the possible outcomes here. He's not going to be somebody I'm playing in 30% of my lineups. I just want to be overweight to the field on him.
And also, what if they score 60 points? Then you probably don't win. You're also probably not going to win tonight regardless. So, and I don't mean that in like a snarky way. Like, it's really, really hard to win large field DFS tournaments. It doesn't happen very often. The only way it really does happen is to pay more attention to what can go right. And there's not really any questions that Anthony Edwards is going to shoot the ball a lot. The only real question is it going to go in the basket? And your guess is as good as mine. Probably not. Utah's good. But when it does, and you're only getting this guy at 12% ownership, he absolutely can just be a tournament winning guy.
Yeah, and that's really what this is. Just there's clear upside for Anthony Edwards in a spot with no Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell. And also, I see somebody in the chat said, well, we have Jimmy Butler play. Yeah, so I'm going to play Jimmy Butler too. I'm going to have lineups with Jimmy Butler. I'm going to have lineups with Anthony Edwards. It doesn't mean that I can't play Anthony Edwards just because Jimmy Butler exists. But, whatever. I don't want to beat this too much to a dead horse. And 9 minutes till we turn this show over to Live Before Lock, so we're going to have to move on. But do us a favor.
One other thing I wanted to throw out, because people are mentioning the conditioning thing, which I think is another at least somewhat risk. Like, we don't know for sure how many minutes he's going to play. But one kind of, and it's tough when guys are coming back from the COVID list too, because you never really know who had COVID, who had symptoms, who didn't, whatever. One kind of trend I think that we've seen though is that it seems pretty safe when guys miss games for conditioning. It seems like once they come back, they're good to go. Like Naz Reid last game just immediately came back, played like 12 minutes. Anthony Edwards took the game off to get his conditioning back. Typically when we've seen that, they just come out and play a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And we've seen some guys, it's not like it's in James Harden just scored like 75 fantasy points coming back from COVID. So it's all different situations player to player. Does it add a risk factor? Yes, except that's one of the reasons his ownership is lower as well. Super chat here from AV Schreier, and this could transition us right to Utah. He said, should he run Mitchell versus Edwards? He likes Mitchell today. So for the Utah Jazz today, Mike Conley is resting today. That's the only real key player out as of now. But Joe Ingles is questionable. As for Donovan Mitchell, yeah, I think he's a pretty good pay up option against a shorthanded Minnesota Timberwolves team. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of a tough question because, Donovan Mitchell looks better to me than Anthony Edwards. He also costs $1,900 more. So, I mean, if you just have a lineup where salary doesn't matter, then for sure Donovan Mitchell. But relative to salary, I think that they're both really good plays. I would say that Edwards probably gives you the gap in Edwards' ceiling versus a lot of players around him in salary is probably bigger than Mitchell versus the other guys in his price range. For example, Donovan Mitchell's great. His ceiling's not any higher than John Morant's. It's not any higher than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's.
Yeah, and then also talking about the other situation with the Utah Jazz here, there's potentially no Joe Ingles. So Joe Ingles had been starting. Joe Ingles appears to be on the decline to me. This has been a pretty disappointing season for him. He just hasn't been particularly good when he's been on the court. Is there anything that really opens up from a value standpoint for you if Ingles isn't able to play?
Kind of curious who would start. If they move Jordan Clarkson into the starting lineup, he would look good just because you can expect more minutes. Obviously, the more he plays alongside Mitchell, he loses usage to some extent, but he also kind of doesn't care. I mean, there's been plenty of times where if you roster Donovan Mitchell and then you watch him play alongside Jordan Clarkson, it's infuriating because Jordan Clarkson just dribbles in circles and pretends Donovan Mitchell doesn't exist. So if Clarkson were to start, he would look better. He looks fine either way, but he would look better if he starts. If you got Rudy Gay in the starting lineup, he would look good. There's the potential that they would just throw some placeholder in there like Trent Forrest, in which case I wouldn't touch that guy.
Yeah, we've seen that from teams like Utah Jazz in the past, or we've seen them from a lot of teams this year who, even the Minnesota Timberwolves talking about the same game. They had Bolmaro starting games somewhere in the year where we play, 12, 14 minutes and wouldn't do anything on the court. It would just start both halves and play a rotation. They could have one of those guys out there. If you see some weird guy that, like you mentioned, that from the Jazz who we would not be expecting to start or isn't a good fantasy producer, wouldn't consider him in that situation. But if Rudy Gay starts, if Jordan Clarkson starts, I think either of them would end up being good value plays if there's no Joe Ingles.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to summarize it is if it's somebody that's already in Utah's rotation, like playing more than 4 or 5 minutes a night, and they start, you can expect that their playing time is going to go up. Obviously, production could go down per minute playing alongside Donovan Mitchell more, but you can feel, I think, pretty confident in their playing time increasing. If they just throw some random guy off the end of the bench into the starting lineup, it's a pretty good sign that they're just trying to keep Jordan Clarkson with the second unit.
Final game on the slate, Portland Trail Blazers, Los Angeles Lakers. For the Blazers, no Anthony Simons, no Yusuf Nurkic, no CJ McCollum, no Robert Covington, no Cody Zeller. In the front court, do any of these guys really stand out to you between Larry Nance and Nasir Little? At this point, I think they're priced to a point where they're just kind of reasonable to me in the player pool, but not super high priority plays.
Yeah, I do like that you're not getting a ton of ownership on those guys. I think that you should get plenty of minutes from them. Larry Nance is at 14.5%. Nas Little's at 16.5%. One thing that does stand out with Larry Nance is that without Nurkic or Zeller on the floor this year, he does have a 15.5% rebounding percentage. So you're not talking about any sort of like minor uptick or still somebody that's going to struggle to get rebounds. Nance does look good in that regard. He's averaging over a fantasy point per minute without those guys on the floor. And I expect him to play a lot tonight. So I think that at their respective ownerships, Nance and Little both look pretty good. Norman Powell is fine. 6,700 isn't the best price tag there, but you're also talking about someone who just came off a game where he played 42 minutes. So there's certainly the potential for him to do well. Clearly the priority here, if there is one, is Lillard at 10-9, increased usage, increased assist opportunities without McCollum. Good matchup against the Lakers. Plenty of competition at the position and the price point, but Lillard, always looks good.
The losers win again. I see your super chat. He asked, can we add a tab for main slate on the boom bust tool for NBA? I think that's a good note. I'll make a note of that and I'll send it to Alex for note for just tool updates to make in the future. But not something that I could do right at this moment on the show, but I do like your idea, and it is something I'm going to take note of and send it forward. Thank you for the super chat. Damian Lillard is a pay-up option. Where does he fit in the overall structure of this slate?
It's really tough for me because on the one hand, I think he's a very good play, like in his own right at 10-9. I think that the salary's fair. I think the matchup's really good and all that. What kind of holds me back on Lillard, though, is that unless I'm playing two of them in the same lineup, do I really want to just spend extra money on Lillard over Mitchell / Morant / Gilgeous-Alexander when I think that they all can just go give you these massive games? And it's not like Lillard's particularly low owned. He's 19% owned on DraftKings right now. So you're not really getting any sort of a discount there either. So I think Lillard's a good play. I'm kind of just not confident how much of him I'm going to get. Same thing for Trey Young. Like, I think Trey Young's fantastic. I also don't think he's that easy to get to when you consider how good the point guard position is tonight.
So moving to the Lakers side of the game, LeBron James and Russell Westbrook, both of them appear to be in a pretty good spot with Anthony Davis remaining out for the Lakers and going to be out for an extended period of time. LeBron earlier in the year, I don't know if he certainly wasn't healthy because we saw him miss games, but beyond that, he just didn't really look quite right early in the season. LeBron has looked fantastic over the last couple of weeks of games. So I have LeBron projected for the most fantasy points of any player on the slate today. And I find it pretty hard to not get exposure to LeBron James, considering that his recent games include 74, 72, 68, 61 fantasy points, been over 60 in 5 of the last 6 games. Where do you stand with LeBron, considering his recent surge with AD out?
I love LeBron here. The only negative, well, I guess there's 2 negatives. One, he's $12,000 on DraftKings. I don't think that is too expensive, but it obviously is it's up there. And then also he's only power forward eligible, which just sucks and makes absolutely no sense. But he's played 9 games now without Anthony Davis this season. He's averaged 1.7 DraftKings points per minute and 38 minutes per game. I expect him to start at center again tonight. Someone in chat had just mentioned that as well. It certainly could be Dwight Howard again, but the reason that I'm leaning towards LeBron is that prior to Howard getting the start last game, Fizdale had said that he fully expected to use at least one of his centers because of the matchup with Adams. Now, Frank Vogel is back tonight, so there's also, I guess, the chance that Frank Vogel comes back and says, what the hell are you doing? We're not playing LeBron at center. I kind of assume Fizdale had run that by Vogel before he did it, but who knows? My assumption is that you're getting LeBron at center. It doesn't make a big difference anyway, but it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, center, point guard, small forward, power. There's nobody on the Portland Trail Blazers that could guard LeBron. To me, it just becomes an issue of, can you pay up for LeBron? When you build your lineup, do you have enough salary space to pay up for him? If the answer is yes, you're playing LeBron. To me, that's basically what it comes down to in lineups, where you have the salary, you get up to him. Do you view Russell Westbrook as a viable pivot option off LeBron, considering that a lot of people are likely to be on him?
Yes and no. I think that it makes sense in that we know the upside that Westbrook offers. He can just go out there and triple double at will, basically. And it's a good matchup for him, just like it is for LeBron. The issue that you run into, though, is it kind of comes back to what I was just saying about Damian Lillard. Westbrook can have a very good game here and then just still end up being completely useless because John Morant or Mitchell or SGA beat him. So looking at the projected ownership on DraftKings right now, we do have Westbrook at only 10%. So, I mean, that's decent. But I think it's more likely if I don't get to LeBron, I just don't get to that, upper price tier.
And then anything else from the Lakers you want to mention, or can we kick this over to the guys on the live before lock?
No, I mean, Monk looks fine at 4,500. Melo looks fine at 5,200. I don't think either one's a priority, but they're both certainly playable.
All right, guys, that is going to do it for us today. Happy New Year. Last show of the year for me, last show of the year for Adam. And stick around, watch live before lock, and give these guys a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel before they start their show.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the NBA, the very last NBA Live Before Lock of the 2021 year. I'm Eric Lindquist, excited to be talking a little bit of NBA hoops here on this Friday afternoon here on the West Coast. It's evening over there on the East Coast. You guys live in the future. Terry is one of those people who lives in the future. He's in ball drop country out there, New Jersey, New York. He's just living the life there. How you doing, my guy?
Not bad, buddy. Coming to you about probably a mile or so as the crow flies from Times Square across the river over here. Glad to be on this side of the river this time of day. I used to work right in Times Square, 40th and 7th in Manhattan. And on New Year's Day, we would bail out of the office at like 2 because everything would get roped off with police fences. All the amateurs would come out and be drunk and on the sidewalk laying down at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's just a mob scene, total mess over there. So happy to be coming to you live from Jersey, where I'm going to be spending New Year's just hanging out in my apartment tonight. I don't know about you.
So when I was in college, I dated a girl from Philadelphia, and we took the train over to New York for like the 31st. And we were like planning on doing stuff. You can't do jack squat in New York on New Year's going around trying to do anything. It was like freaking cold. People were already lined up in every corner of the world to try to get into Times Square. Nobody from New York goes to Times Square. That was an interesting thing to learn about New Yorkers, is that it's little lemmings walking that direction. But it was just a cold, frozen deal. Shocking that didn't work out. Pretty happy about it. But here we are. Terry, Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to everybody there in the chat. All my friends, quack, quack. Yes, quack, quack, even though they got murdered in their bowl game, as well as Iowa State and Oregon losing back-to-back wasn't fun here. But we're getting ready to rock some natty title. Do you have any picks here for tonight, Terry?
For college football?
Yeah.
You were talking to the wrong guy on the college football front, my friend. There's only so much room in this head for professional sports and all these movies and everything back here. So college sports is where I sacrifice. I find out about these guys once they get to the pro level. So around draft season, I find out who the top college players in the year were. I watch March Madness, of course. But college football, same story. I find out about these guys around draft season.
Well, as soon as we get off this show, we're going to be having that Georgia-Michigan game. Looks like 17-6 right now, Alabama. So watching a little bit of that leading into this show, but I need Cincy to cover 14 for me, baby. But hit like button, everybody. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. You know the drill by now. 2022 is just around the corner. We're going to have a lot of great offers, great stuff here for you. But let's get into some NBA, because that's what you're really here for. That's what you're interested in. Terry, is there any major piece of news that you're still waiting on that's going to craft your lineups on this 7-gamer?
I think we've gotten the most key, critical, major pieces of news out of the way. I was waiting on the Heat news, and we got both pieces of that with both Jimmy and Kyle Lowry playing. We've got a few questionable guys, but I don't really believe the Q tag on LeBron. I think he's full go, so I'm not sweating that for news or anything like that. I think the Knicks situation is somewhat interesting. I think we still got the Fournier question mark, and I think that could have a big downstream impact on who's in the backcourt for the Knicks tonight. So I'm paying attention to that. I'm paying attention to what the starting lineup looks like. Could certainly get some weird Tibbs action on the starting lineup that would impact the Obi Toppin play for value that people are looking at. So there are a couple pieces, but I think the Heat were giving us a ton of early value in the day, and then we got both those pieces coming back. So it's kind of diminished the value that we're getting there in some ways. So that was the critical one for the night. And then there's just interesting parts, like Anthony Edwards being in and active is interesting. And I think there's some upside there that was getting debated on the last one as well.
I am floored at how low the Knicks ownership is. And a lot of that is probably waiting in the wings for stuff. And, for me, there's the one island game you kind of have an hour and a half after the Minnesota-Utah game. I think Minnesota-Utah has some interesting pieces enough, but legitimately this Knicks spot, I'm shocked that nobody's over 20%. And it's a lot of unknowns. It's a lot of, trying to figure out Alec Burke minutes. That's ridiculous. Not because I want to play him at 7,300 on DK, because I want to do the absolute opposite. But there's so many guys, Obi Toppin, Kemba Walker, Mitchell Robinson, those three specifically, I want in a lot of my lineups, so long as, I hopefully Taj Gibson is not starting. That is literally what I've got my fingers crossed here for. And also, Happy New Year to Loco. He's keeping everybody updated in the chat as we go here. Brian Shaw says he hopes Serge Ibaka will be able to play a lot of minutes tonight with no Ivica Zubats. Shaw also said he's likely going to play some, quote, funky lineups with Zubats and Isaiah Hartenstein out, figures small lineups. Good Lord, I hate the Clippers. Talk to me about what that quote means to you.
Oh, it means it's just going to be a fun mess of a situation, I think. The Ibaka play is interesting, right? I mean, he's coming up massively owned, but he's very, very optimal on both sites because of the cheap price. So if we get that idea of him playing a lot of minutes, I do think that's interesting for DFS purposes. 4,000 on FanDuel, power forward and center eligible, 3,200 on DK, coming up 40-ish% optimal on the DK slate, 25%-ish optimal on the FanDuel slate. He's kind of a plug and play, but there is a ton of negative leverage on both sites because of all the ownership. I think he's more building block, especially now that we've got that idea that, yeah, he's going to be full go and we're expecting a lot of minutes. So I kind of like the play. I hate the ownership on it. As far as everybody else, I mean, that just throws it wide open to, we could see massive extended run for a guy that Adam was talking about liking in this situation, Marcus Morris in the last run. 33 minutes on the projection for Marcus Morris on FanDuel doesn't do a lot. At 6,300 on DK, had him pretty optimal. If we start thinking about that in terms of, hey, maybe they just let him loose and 36, 38 minutes is in play, something around there, then you can start racking up some interesting fantasy production. And then it's just a total crapshoot of guys, carrying down through these teens projections. So I still don't love to guess at, like, if I give Alex has Amir Coffey, let's say, projected at 22 minutes. If I decide, hey, in a crazy world, Amir Coffey plays 26, 28 minutes. Do I want to make that choice? Maybe as a tournament dart throw in a few spots. On FanDuel at 4,300, not so much. 3,700 shooting guard and small forward on DK, a little bit more interesting. But it's kind of dart throws and a bit of a crapshoot here. So I'm not loving that situation.
Happy birthday, Brandon Smith. What's up, guys? It's my birthday. Hanging out with you guys. Love it. We love that you're hanging out with us. Happy birthday to you. Happy New Year. All the lovely things. Appreciate you stopping on by. I appreciate everybody stopping by here. Again, hit that like button. Very, very helpful for us last day. Terry, I got to say, do you know who the second most popular play is on DraftKings currently at this given moment?
The second most popular play on DraftKings? Oh, I do not. Is it LeBron James?
Is Derek White. And I don't know how you possibly fade somebody with the last name White on this sacred day. Rip to Betty. Do we just jam Derek White on last name White day?
That's an added bonus reason to do it, right? 6,800 on the DK.
And we're going position by position. We'll just start at the top guard. There it is. Done.
There you go. Yeah.
Rip Betty White. Gilmore Girls. Or not Gilmore Girls.
Gilmore Girls, huh?
Sorry, I said that wrong. Obviously, huge fan. Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, look, I think, there's definitely the narrative where he was a big Betty White fan. He picks it up, takes the name, takes the mantle, and really smashes here. More to the point, I love the $6,800 price on Derek White tonight. Point guard and shooting guard eligible on the DK slate, coming up 32% optimal over there. The ownership is efficient, but I think it's fine to ride with the chalk on that play. I don't see any downside to that at price. On the FanDuel slate, I don't like it nearly as much. He's 8,000 point guard only on the FanDuel slate. Wildly different play. And we've got a lot of those where the plays are just dramatically different site to site. The pricing is all over the place today. So it's an important day to pay attention to the plays specific to the site that you're playing on as we talk about these things. So Derek White, full go on the DK slate, ride the chalk. FanDuel, not so much. I think it's a negatively leveraged play coming up 15% optimal, 18% ownership. I'd rather get to different players.
As would I. I think Derek White, chalky. I understand it. 6,800. I think I'm going to take some other shots on some other Spurs. We'll get to that here a little bit later, but the rest of the guard position, I know you're focusing a little bit more over here on the blue site. So I'm going to make sure that I cross-reference a little bit of what I'm talking about here, but on the top end, we can play him at shooting guard, Jimmy Butler on FanDuel. So there's that. But focusing over on the DK spot for me, Desmond Bane, 20.7%. I've been playing a lot of him leading into that Laker game. But then the ownership kind of shied me away from getting to that number. He was like 20, 25%. Again, 20%. Can he go out and shoot the lights out of it? I mean, 6 for 18 was definitely on the low spectrum of what you would expect for him shooting output wise. But Desmond Bane, 20%. I think that's decent enough. Caleb Martin, a little bit less appealing to me now with Jimmy Butler in, but I get that as well. I just have to say, John Morant, I'm just going to be jamming him everywhere. Is there somebody that you're looking at the guard position that you just want to get to a lot of today?
Yeah, I think each one of those guys that you mentioned is in play in, to varying degrees, particularly on the DK slate. Bane is definitely interesting over there. For the FanDuel slate at 7,600, it's an okay kind of a price. It's like a fair price, right? It's not a good price. It's not necessarily a bad price. I think he just kind of produces around the median over there. 0.96 fantasy points for the year, 1.5 over the 1.15 rather over the last 3 per minute. So a quality per minute play, but I just like it for price over on the DK slate, even with a little bit of ownership. I think that's fine as long as you're getting different elsewhere. Ja makes a ton of sense at 9,600. That's a discount of a price for his overall talents. The guy that I've been getting to a lot on the FanDuel slate, it's one of those cases where it's a dramatically different price. And actually there's 2 of them. It would be Trey Young and or Damian Lillard. Yep. Trey Young, 9,700 on FanDuel. Lillard, 9,100 on FanDuel. Both those guys well over 10,000. Trey Young, 11,500 on DK. Damian Lillard, 10,900 on DK. They're just radically different plays from site to site. A lot of ownership on them on both sites, and they're both viable on the DK slate at the higher price. They're just much, much better plays at the FanDuel as far as point per dollar price outlook.
Yeah, looking over on Yahoo, our sponsor Yahoo, Russell Westbrook has been eternally $34, $35. He's cheaper than Lillard, Morant, Trey Young, all those guys. So I'm going to be taking some shots in that late night hammer with him, but otherwise he's pretty unplayable for me on DK. Okay on FanDuel. Yeah, as you said, I do prefer those guys looking that direction. So I really, really like getting to Ja Morant. That's kind of my priority spend up, I think, across the board outside of our sponsor Yahoo, simply because you have 44 in there and Russell Westbrook, just a little bit cheaper. We got news Anthony Edwards is going to be playing there, $35. I guess he's small forward over on Yahoo, so not necessarily a talking point at the guard spot here. Let's keep it on moving down this position. We've got Tyler Hero now. Looks a lot different now with Jimmy Butler being ruled in, being good to go here. That game is in that early window. Obviously, if it's going to be a 45, 50 spot for somebody like Tyler Hero at 7,200, you're going to need him. You don't need to worry about late swap. You're probably going to need that score, but I'm finding it tough to even get to like 13, 14% with Butler in. Is there anything you're doing with him over on FanDuel?
I like the hero spot. You get him at the shooting guard and small forward on FanDuel, so there's a little bit different kind of utility, but that does run a little bit redundant to where you're getting Jimmy Butler as well. So it's kind of a give and take in terms of the positioning, whether you decide to play them together. I do like the $6,700 price tag over there. Guy who's put up 0.98 fantasy points per minute for the season, 1.13 over the last 3 games. Put up 41.7 in 35 minutes the last time out. We know that Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler are both back, so it changes the nature of the play. He's coming up positively leveraged still as of the last run. That's one I'm going to watch where the leverage score goes in terms of our optimal lineup number as the next 40 minutes or so go by as we run into lock. If that optimal lineup rate comes down to more even with his ownership, which is around 17%, I'm a little bit less interested. But with a little bit of ownership edge and the discounted salary and the positional flex, I'm kind of still in on Tyler Hero on the FanDuel slate. A little bit less so on the DK slate, but the ownership is a lot lower over there at 7,200 point guard shooting guard. So I think there is an argument to be made that he's still got some value in terms of just getting a little bit different on the DK slate.
A lot of Pangos talk in the chat. This is kind of fascinating because we've got some cheap guards over on DK. I don't know what their utility is necessarily that much on FanDuel. Playing a little bit more DK and our sponsor Yahoo because, I don't want to play all 3 sites. I'm going to have a little FanDuel. Let's be serious. I can't stay away completely. But Kevin Pangos, 3,500. You've got a guy like Skylar Mays at 3,800. Lou Williams. We got a super chat about Lou Williams as well. I just kind of wanted to throw all of these sub 4K guys over on DK into the bucket, but the losers win again. Lou Williams thoughts, bare minimum on DK. I don't really know what to do with that. I mean, we haven't really seen his minutes extend. He hasn't played over 20 minutes this entire season. 3K is 3K though. He's a guy who's put 35% usage. When he's on the floor, he's going to be chucking. So that's just kind of the Lou Williams way. But sub 20 minutes, it's really hard for me to want to invest on this slate. I don't say that I prioritize Pangos. I mean, I'm just a little bit above that 12% we've got, but anybody under 4K at guard really stand out to you today, Terry?
I mean, there is the 3K is 3K thought on Lou Williams, kind of like you said, but chat was debating the conditioning question around Anthony Edwards, who I believe is like 20 years old and in supreme shape and has missed a handful of games. Lou Williams, according to what I'm looking at, has also not played in the 5 most recent games. So why are we not sweating the conditioning there? 25.4 minute projection certainly could deliver value, but it's kind of a shaky proposition from where I'm sitting. 0.84 fantasy points per minute for the season. we could probably, even at 3K, we could probably do better just on the question mark around minutes. So I'm a little bit shaky on that one. Pangos, 3,500. Certainly the minutes projection is there to support it. 25.2 minute projection at 3,500, coming up 11% optimal. Owned efficiently, though, at 11.8% ownership. 4,500 on Malik Monk out in LA. We've seen what he can do in, here and there. 0.866 fantasy points per minute over the last 3 and 35.3 minutes per game. 12% optimal, but another guy negatively leveraged. We're getting a lot of negative leverage on a lot of these guard plays on the DK slate. That's where a lot of the value is. And then paying up at the forward spot seemed to be a good approach to lineup construction. So it's just a matter of kind of which one of these slightly negative dart throws do you want to take in your value plays on the DK slate from where, from how it's coming together to me. I don't love Aaron Wiggins at 3,800, but he's also in that kind of a play range.
Give me the minutes, at least with Pangos, over somebody like a 3K Lou Williams. And that seems very against everything I believe in, because I love Lou Williams. I love that man. I love the lemon pepper wings just like he does. They are delicious. So no doubt about it. I want Kevin Pangos, though, just because he'll be on the floor more, should be involved there. I just don't see the ceiling in 20 minutes for Lou Williams. That's my biggest problem. Could he go out and put up 30? Yes, but could. But even that, I just think there's going to be some of these 4K, 5K guys that we can find to go for 40 plus. And I think finding my ways onto some of these Knicks is going to be a big part of what I do with this slate, which brings us to a super chat that we'll get to at the forward position. I promise. Corey Randall, who asked, is it Obi Toppin Day? You will have the official word from the official Knicks fan. That is not me, between the two of us here. So I'm going to make sure that we get that answered. And then Wayne Ingersoll, $4.99, saying, Eric, my dude, appreciate you. Thank you for the laughs and stats. Terry, thank you for the stats. He didn't say the laughs, but you know what? I know something Terry's very good at. I know, it was hurtful to me too, but Wayne, thank you so much. Your $4.99. I think Terry will put on a fake happy face just because of that. But something Terry does do very well, movie quotes. He knows movies. The man was at a video store once upon a time, absolutely crushing the game. I listen, but I saw a really cool question from Aton on Twitter that I want to bring up here now, because I thought it was a fascinating thing. What is the second most favorite line from your favorite movie?
So I answered him with a couple of tweets. I sent some Get Yarn clips over to him, and one of them was from.
But you need to deliver it as the character to the people right now.
Here lies the body of Mary Lee, died at the age of 103. For 14 years, she kept her virginity. Not a bad record for this vicinity. You know what that's from?
I do not.
That's Quint from Jaws.
Oh, sick. Okay, I should have gotten that. Here's the thing. I hadn't watched Jaws until 2 years ago. Like my fiance, now wife, almost broke up with me because she was like, legitimately, you must be a crazy person. You work in movies. I've got a Godfather poster. I'm literally, everybody learned that yesterday, whatever. But I gotta say, for me, I want to see if you can get it. I will now boldly go where many, many men have gone before.
Oh, shit. I know that line, but it's not coming to me with that.
It's the second most famous from this movie.
Saving Private Ryan? No.
Emphasis on famous.
It's about hooking up with a girl.
Emphasis on famous, chat.
Almost Famous?
There it is. Found it. Love it.
Yep,
look at that.
That's right.
When he's hanging out with Penny,
Yep.
she overdoses.
Yep,
So, lighthearted little moment.
It was about a girl. Yeah.
Almost Famous. Probably. So Gladiator was my favorite movie forever. And then I think Almost Famous, couple rewatches now that I'm old, like that youthful, I don't know. It just knocks around. Oh, we've got Tyler chiming in. That's why I stay around this shitty town. I get older. They stay the same age. I don't know.
Wooderson. That's from Dazed and Confused. That's Wooderson from Dazed and Confused.
Oh, it is. There you go.
Like these high school girls.
I love it. Guys.
Got a joint, man.
What was that?
If you did, got a joint, man. Be a lot cooler if you did.
See, that's what Terry's good at. I wanted to showcase Terry a little bit. The man knows his movie quotes, no doubt about it. Hit the like button for Terry, my friend Terry over there. Let's keep it moving through the guard position here. We've got a number of things that we got to be talking about here. Specifically, what is it? Here we go. Found it on the top end. If you're not going to be going to like a Trey Young here on this slate over on FanDuel, again, 11-5, hard for me to want to go nuts with that kind of a number here. But you talked about all of these guards that you kind of prioritize here on the top end. You still got to find some value. And there's somebody that I feel pretty uncomfortable with over on FanDuel. And I'm just going to say it's not like a great feeling, but I think you got to be taking some shots on like a Kevin Porter Jr. at 7K against Miami. He's not going to project out well, like whatsoever, it looks like. But I'm just kind of trying to find some of these Houston guys. I'm going to have a lot of Jimmy Butler, I think, if I play some more over on FanDuel, if I decide to jam some stuff here. But finding some of these Houston pieces to be playing minutes. Jalen Green, another guy on both sites. I mean, 4,900 for the DK slate. And then going over to FanDuel, he is, 5,700. That's a little less appealing. But is there anything you're trying to find in terms of like a really low owned option that you might want to overinvest on for tournaments today?
Yeah, so with the Houston guys, I think you hit it on the head there with that, noticing that price discrepancy. I'll get some shares of Porter, but it'll probably come at small forward, and it'll probably only be like around where the field is at in the 5 to 10% range. In terms of extreme value plays, we talked about Pangos. You mentioned Skylar Mays at one point, shooting guard eligible only on the FanDuel slate, 4,000. I would take a few shares of him, but I don't love him at negative leverage and only 12% optimal. There's not a ton. I kind of like there's a lot of like mid-range 5s and 7s and guys like that. And then there's pay up options on the FanDuel slate. So unless you're taking some of those negatively leveraged darts and using those guys in terms of the guys who are coming up most frequently optimal on this board, there's some ugly spots. And then there's, a guy that I actually just noticed now that I resorted this board, and I'm not comfy with this one at all, is Dennis Smith Jr., who we've got projected at 20.7 minutes in the Portland rotation out there. 3,500 at the dead minimum. I get it. I don't love that though. He's a guy who's just let me down so many times over the course of his career. 0.95 fantasy points per minute for the season. Totally respectable. That's totally fine when he's getting action. But I was looking in other directions in terms of Portland. So I don't love that one. But I guess for price and for the amount that he's coming up optimal versus the ownership that he's getting, it is at least worth some consideration on that FanDuel slate. 6.9 leverage score. So I'll throw him into the mix.
Chad having a lot of fun with the movie. And I got to say, you guys are freaking sharp. You guys are fantastic. Really enjoying that. Donovan Mitchell, what are your thoughts on him on this slate?
I don't mind that. He's negatively leveraged on both sites, which I don't love. And you're paying up for him when we've got a lot of similarly priced guys at similar positioning who come up a little bit more frequently optimal, have a higher median projection, end up with a higher boom score probability. But as a guy who could certainly go out there and knock down a slate relevant score, 1.22 fantasy points per minute for the season. Certainly, a guy who's totally viable here. I don't think the prices are wrong necessarily. I like him better at 8,600 shooting guard, point guard on the FanDuel slate. He's got the multi-position on DK as well, but he's 9,700 over there. So where I got him, if I was playing both sites, it would be more on FanDuel probably, despite having more ownership over there. I just think it's more viable for the price, but I think there are other guys that I would get to first in this guard spot, be it at the top end or kind of from that mid range that I mentioned, like the 6 and 7s.
I'm not related to David Trapp. I'm just wanted to just rile up chat and whatever else. You know how I do. So whatever, just enjoying my day. I'm looking at a number of other guards. There's really nothing else to talk about. Like nothing else is somebody like I can't remember a slate where we had this flat of ownership on DraftKings, like at the guard position, like outside of Derek White, nobody really getting over 21% ownership. It's kind of a really fun day for tournaments. You can make your cases. Like I think even Lou Williams, who I don't like, I think you can make a case for at 3K. Eric Bledsoe, horrible play in my opinion, but he's 6,200. I can see the case for him without Paul George. Like there's a number of these guys. I just think getting to I'm not going to get to Kyle Lowry anymore. Kevin Porter Jr., I said, not 7,900 over on DK, but over on the FanDuel slate, getting to a little bit. I think you can find some of these guys to mix and match into lineups if you're making a bunch of them. If you're making one, I don't know how thin you really need to be getting on this slate. There's a number of options. And as I said, I'm going to be waiting on some Knicks value. But anything else for you from the guard position, Terry?
I think we touched on a lot of, the Knicks are definitely worth a quick mention there. We've got the obvious play in Kemba. I think quickly there could be some value because he's coming up negatively leveraged on both. But if we had any kind of news announcement, that might get a lot of ownership attention because people do know about the play. 4,600 point guard, shooting guard. I don't dislike it on DK. 51 on FanDuel. A little bit less likely on the FanDuel slate, I think. But I would take some shots with quickly. Alec Burks, by the same token, could see extended run. He had to get hot the last game, and he had to have the young kids, Quentin Grimes and Deuce McBride, kind of come up blank before him. And then Tibbs just kind of went with the hot hand, as Tibbs tends to do. So I could see that happening with Burks again tonight, especially with Randle off the court. Randle, their primary facilitator. Burks is a capable facilitator, whether he's playing the point or whether he's at the, on one of the wings. So I could see it with Burks tonight, but I don't love it. It's not really shining through in the numbers here. It's kind of a dart throw, build him into some lineups and figure he's, around 10-ish% optimal. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, with Reggie Jackson back, I don't really know what to make of those Clippers minutes, Fidel. It's really kind of a dicey spot. I think outside of Morris, there's not going to really be any ownership outside of Ibaka, of course. But I mean, it's Ibaka, Morris, and then it falls off a cliff. I think you can mix and match Terrence Mann, Luke Kennard, and stuff like into tournament lineups here from the Clipper side, but nothing I'm super gung-ho about. Something I am gung-ho about, though, Terry. Awesemo Plus tools and content. $29.95 for the weekly pass right now. If you check out Awesemo Plus right now, too, NBA Live is 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum right now. That's all caps, one word, NBA Live. Make sure you take advantage of that offer. Doesn't get a whole lot better with that, other than, of course, when you use Yahoo's promo, which we'll talk about here in about 15, 20 odd minutes after we get done covering forwards. But use this. If you've used Awesemo before, you know all the tools and content that we have and how beneficial that can be for your process, for being able to build profitable lineups. Use promo code NBA Live, get that 25% off, and stop guessing and start winning. Join us here at Awesemo Plus today. 720 Red Dog. Why does it seem like I've taken 3 shots coming into this? It's 3:30 p.m. here on the West Coast. I think not, my friend. I think not.
5 shots.
Yeah, 5. Yeah, you were lowballing it, is what it was. You were lowballing it. Let's jump to the forward spot here. Serge Ibaka. I don't really know what you want me to say. I mean, he's 3,200. I'm assuming that he's going to play a bajillion minutes. We've got him for 27. He's a 0.85 on DK, around 0.9 on FanDuel. So like legitimately, or actually other way around. I'm definitely looking at rostering a ton of Serge Ibaka. Do we even need to talk about that?
I mean, I don't think we need to talk about it outside of he's extremely popular. That's the only negative factor about that. He's going to be in a ton of lineups. But like I said at the top, I just think it's one of those pieces where he's just kind of a fundamental building block because of that price, because of the positioning and how he makes things work around him. So you're just plugging in the production for price and you're not really worrying about the public ownership there. Get different in other spots. He helps you get to the things you're going to need to unlock the top of standings. And it's a situation where he doesn't have to do very much to come through and deliver some value at that price. If he comes through and delivers a ton, you're well on your way with a lot of friends, and you just have to rely on where you got different to carry you through. And if he goes bust, it's not going to totally tank you because you're going to be with so many people. So I'm totally willing to go that route. I don't love it. I don't love it in terms of the player, but I think it makes a ton of sense today.
Hold the presses. Did you see the news that just dropped, Terry?
I didn't. Who'd we lose?
Ooh, Obi Toppin will start in place of Julius Randle.
Okay.
I don't even know what you want me to add. This is absolutely your time to shine. New York Knicks, go.
Hey, look, you expect certain things when you draft a kid as old as Obi was coming out of the draft, and this is his
23, I believe, coming out of Ohio there.
Yep, and not getting any younger. So, Obi's got to take the reins with this opportunity. He's shown it in flashes, right? He's an around-the-rim kind of a guy. He's a hustle kind of player. No real jump shot to speak of, nothing like that. But could he grab some boards? Could he do some dirty work around the rim and put up a decent fantasy production day for 4,300 on FanDuel, 3,900 on DK? Absolutely. He's 1.05 fantasy points per minute across the course of the season. Over the last 3, 1.14, so a little bit of uptick in recent games. And I think he's earned a little bit of trust from Tibbs. Like Tibbs, when he threw him in the playoffs last year, I think he saw a little something that, all right, I'm willing to trust this kid a little bit. Tibbs has trouble with young players, but we've seen it with Toppin and we've seen it with Quickly now. And he's given a little bit of minutes to the rookies this year. So, yeah, I can see Obi coming out. We had him projected at 24 minutes in what I expect was a backup projection. Bump that to like 28. He's going to gain value here. So the field will be around efficient. Good.
Chad is always in an interesting place. Matthew, he's saying that he doesn't understand how this is possibly news. It's gigantic news, and it needs to be well regarded. You need to understand that, like, when things like this happen with a coach like Tibbs, would you have been shocked if Taj Gibson had started, Terry?
No, I was actually expecting that.
I was kind of expecting it too. It's Tibbs. He trusts Gibson. I'm very happy to see this confirmation well before lock because I was planning on playing a lot of Obi Toppin, which brings us back to our super chat from our friend earlier. Obi Toppin season. It is full bore, fire it up, right?
Yeah, makes total sense, especially now with the starting minutes. Absolutely, fire away.
All right, we got the Heat starting lineup as well. Lowry, Hero. Hero starting. There we go.
Okay.
Lowry, Hero, Martin, Butler, Yurtseven. All right,
Okay.
I like that. I like that very much for him.
Material on play.
Man, there's a couple of pieces of news kind of rolling in. This is fun. I always like reacting to stuff a little bit more than let's go down the board. Let's talk about everything. Unless there's like a major point and in consensus that we need to really be talking about. But Kyle Guy is still just a guy to me. I wasn't very gung-ho on him. I know the guys on the show previous to us were talking about him a little bit here, but Caleb Martin in that starting lineup, I think 4,300, he's going to look good on DK. Of course, having Butler in there, 10K looks absurd, but I'm still going to probably get there over on DK. Anything for you from that starting lineup? Because Tyler Hero starting, just wanted to see that confirmation. I think that is really nice.
I like that keeps Hero very much in play for me, which is the critical piece there. I really like that. 6,700. I talked about it before. Shooting guard, small forward on the FanDuel slate. Like getting to Hero a lot, and especially now it looks like we're getting a little positive leverage on him in that starting lineup. Might change as we get toward lock, but I do like that a lot. Kyle Guy, I actually wrote about in my article this afternoon. So I was on that minimum price play at one point in the day. It looks like most of the gleam has come off of that one. We've got him projected down at 14.7 minutes now. Maybe as a dart throw at minimum price if you needed to put somebody in there who might see the court for even a little bit of time. I don't totally discount it, but it's definitely not the play that it was earlier in the day for anybody that's reading those articles.
All right. David Nwaba is going to continue to start here for Houston. That's an interesting development too. I mean, he's started the last two, but let's see. Where did that lineup go? I just had it. Porter Jr., Green, Gordon, Nwaba, and Wood here. That's kind of a fascinating way to go about living your life here. I know Şengün, I wasn't expecting that here. Quentin Grimes, we just got news, will start in the event that Evan Fournier sits. I hope he does because I'm planning on having tons of Knicks exposure. That's just kind of the way that goes. But anything for you in terms of analyzing Nwaba, who we only had for like 12, 13 minutes. He's played in his last two games here, 24 and 33. You obviously have Kevin Porter Jr., who I expect to start ramping up his minutes even further from the 35 that he played first time out of the gate. Eric Gordon still played 33 minutes against the Lakers. Jayshawn Tate, somebody that, is going to be re-entering after a week off here. Jayshawn Tate and KJ Martin. KJ Martin still in health and safety protocols, but I think he was cleared to rejoin. I don't think that he's in, but anything for you with Nwaba to mine out? 4,800, not the cheapest tag over on FanDuel.
Yeah, but I tell you what, he's not going to pick up much ownership. He doesn't get ownership when he's projected when he's projected for starters run like we had him the other day. And we just saw it. He came out 28.9 fantasy points in 33 minutes. It's not a smash through the ceiling kind of a score, but over the course of the season, 0.99 fantasy points per minute on 15.7% usage over the last 28.5 minutes per game, 0.93 fantasy points per minute. I think there's enough there that you could go to that. It's a rotated in and out piece. It's a mix and match kind of a guy. It's not somebody that we're suddenly going to rush to get. 3,800 on DK. Maybe there's a little bit more extended utility at the small forward spot, multi-position on FanDuel. I think he's an interesting movable piece because I don't think the ownership is going to catch up there. On the Knicks side, that was the same setup that we saw the last time with Grimes getting that start. I think he went like 0 for 5 in his first few minutes, got pulled at one of the first breaks, and then it was the Alec Burks show pretty much after that. So we could see that again. If Grimes starts hot, we could see that diminish Burks a little bit. Kind of a non-piece there in terms of would you roster much Grimes?
No.
I think he's more of a
watching that last rotation in the last game kind of freaked me out a little bit towards him. Alec Burks also shot the absolute lights out of it. Maybe if Quentin Grimes comes in and knocks down shots in that first rotation, because he had been shooting it pretty decently coming off of that one lone start where he came out of legitimately nowhere. And then Tibbs is like, oh, maybe I have something here. Played him against Atlanta. He ended up playing really well there. 5 for 12 from 3. I think that was decent enough. Against Minnesota, got some run there as well. That Detroit really wonky start, really wonky spot for all those guys. Him, Kemba, all of them got the early hook. So I'm not going to read too much into that. It was a really bad team here. Alec Burks ended up playing 27 minutes. I do not expect that with everybody else here if Quentin Grimes gets the start. I might get to a little bit, but I'm not going to go nuts. He's probably my least favorite Nick that I would probably get to out of the 5 or 6 that would be in play.
Yeah, I wouldn't really be looking at him. I mean, especially not on FanDuel. He's just a dead no on FanDuel at 5,400 somehow. At 3,700, there's at least some viability in the play. There's a heartbeat there, but that's not a go-to. The Knicks that I would not really be considering here would be Taj Gibson, Miles McBride, Quentin Grimes, and Kevin Knox that are out of the guys that we have any kind of minutes projected for. Everybody else kind of in play.
All right, we got an OKC starting lineup as well a while ago. I kind of just missed that a little bit. Shea was going to play. He's available to play. Shea, Dort, Wiggins, Watson, Roby. No Ty Jerome. Thought he might be a thing. Send it in, Jerome. That's a terrible analogy. You know what I'm talking about, right? Bill Packer. It's fine. Continue on. Anything for you from that? Because I got nothing.
I didn't know that one. SGA is a little bit interesting. 9,400 on the FanDuel, 94 across both sites, actually. 10.2% optimal on the FanDuel site with positive leverage as of my last update. Might catch up a little bit, but just another guy to plug into that like fairly high priced guard play rotation. So put him on the list with some of those other guys that we talked about. Maybe one who goes under the radar just a little bit based on the earlier Q tag.
All right, let's round out the forward spot here. I'm looking back over at DK. Go ahead and tell me a little bit about the blue side here as we're going as well. Keldon Johnson, another Spur, sub 6K. I think you can get to a little bit. I don't want to go nuts. Olympic gold medalist Keldon Johnson. Got to put some respect on that name. Marcus Morris here, 6,300. He always ends up a lot more popular than I expect him to be. Probably going to be shying away from that 17% number, but he's a decent enough play. Looking at pretty flat ownership outside of Serge Ibaka. I'm obviously getting to a lot more LeBron than 24%. I think we've got enough value here at this point. Norman Powell about at the field on 22%. We're looking at for him there. But anybody that else on the forward side for you on the blue side over on FanDuel that you're just getting to a lot more than the field on?
Not necessarily a lot more than the field, but guys that I think are interesting to mix and match through lineups. Cam Reddish, I think, is certainly viable at 5,400, shooting guard and small forward eligible, coming up about 20% optimal. He's negatively leveraged, so a lot of these guys are going to be in that same bucket where they're similarly priced in the mid-range, pulling up some popularity, a little bit of negative leverage. I would throw Jaron Jackson into that boat, power forward and center eligible on the FanDuel slate at 6,700. We've seen the numbers come down a little bit since Ja's been back, but I do still like the play there. Caleb Martin has forward eligibility on both sites, so I like the idea of getting to him with a 32-minute projection. RJ Barrett is one of those Knicks that's just going to be in the rotation, plenty to do. Has been a disappointment at 0.81 fantasy points per minute for the season, but definitely somebody that I think with no Julius Randle there, they might just decide to focus on RJ a little bit. Hey, kid, take the ball, be the featured player today. We talked about Marcus Morris a little bit in terms of the uptick that he'll see in opportunities and time out on the court. Couple movable parts otherwise. We talked Anthony Edwards, Kevin Love, 7,300. I don't love the price, but it seems like the public doesn't really love the price either because nobody's going to him there. Solid minutes projection around 25, 10% optimal, 9 on the leverage score category. So definitely some leverage there. Similar story across town on DraftKings.
I'm playing a lot of Larry Nance. I think getting to some of him allows for me to mix and match more pieces into the next game. Same kind of story with any of those pieces from Portland. Getting to more Powell, getting to more LeBron, getting more to all of those guys allows for me to kind of swap into the guys that I want from those earlier games. So that's kind of what I'm planning to do on this slate. Thank God yesterday I couldn't even late swap. I didn't know what to do with myself. It was just a ridiculous day. Oh, and Jimmy Butler. I absolutely love him at 10K. I'm going to be over the field on that. Anything else for you from forward, Terry?
You mentioned LeBron. I really like the spot for LeBron, despite the fact that he's the most expensive player by far on both sites. I think it makes a lot of sense to go to LeBron and pay up to get to him here, even with a little bit of negative leverage, just for the raw scoring potential. At a certain point, we have to forget about the value plays, get a lot of the values and mid-ranges in there, and I like getting to LeBron here. So I'm going to have a decent amount of him. And then, the Portland guys, like you mentioned, Nance and Powell, both coming up a significant amount of the time for me as well.
How's that football game going right now? I didn't even legitimately see anything. I had to pull it down because what is it? Give me the 27 to 6. 27 to 6. Boo this man. Boo. Bad news for me. Roll Tide for Tyler Zander down there.
Cincinnati's not revolutionizing college football.
Looks like he's going to start a new NFT project with his winnings from this Bama W. That's what I'm excited about. Also, we should all be investing in those kind of things. My God, I was just doing a deep dive last night on NFTs, and I feel prehistoric as a 34-year-old, but then I realized most of the guys who have just made a killing on this are much, much older than me. So there is that. Got to get back into it here. But yeah, Cincy, God, it's just disgusting. Come on. What am I doing here? You know what you should be doing is you should just be playing on Yahoo, because Yahoo is a place where you can actually make money, as opposed to if you're playing Cincinnati going up against Bamba. Now that I just said it out loud, I realize why that didn't work out very well. But Yahoo Fantasy, that is the place you want to be playing, because you will get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum if you're a new user. Sign up, deposit $10 or more. You'll be all set to go. All set to go. $10 or more. You play in any of the paid contests, and I'm telling you, lowest management fees anywhere around the industry, period. 10 to 12% for most of their main contests, but they're doing contests with no management fee. That's no rake. They're doing things like the 200K overlay contest on Sundays, $20 entry fee, negative management fee, 200K overlay put into the pot. It's ridiculous. I'm telling you, Yahoo has the best, most player-friendly tournaments, bar none, period. End of story. And you can go join and play there and get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. It doesn't get any easier or better than that. Plus, we have a lot of these other great offers that are kind of simultaneously going on with them. You can receive a $10 credit plus the additional $25 when you make your first deposit using promo code Yahoo10. So use Yahoo10 for that promo code. You will get an additional $10 of credit with that $25. So I'm telling you right now, stop winning, whatever. Now it seems like I've taken 5 shots after that promo, but I got to tell you, without a doubt, start playing at Yahoo if you haven't had the opportunity yet. I'm enjoying it so much. They're so great. We love having them as a sponsor, not just of the NBA Slate Starter podcast that I do with Rinpack, top 10 player in the world, NBD, no big deal. But also so many of the different shows that we have going, including today's Live Before Lock. So thank you so much to them. Excited to be talking about their product for another half hour. We're going to react to a lot of ownership. We're going to react to a lot of things as they come in, news, anything that you guys want to know. I just want to open it up to questions and kind of react to some of these lineups coming in, especially because we only have Miami and Houston in this early window. But I know whenever this Knicks lineup drops, we're going to have a lot of talking points. We have Atlanta and Cleveland. We've got the Clippers, Toronto. We'll be able to kind of fine tune our lineups to be able to help you guys to adjust on the fly here. Plus talk a lot of Yahoo. Looking forward to it here with Terry, but rounding out the forward position, I just wanted to get that done so that I didn't lose track of time as we get going. 14 minutes left to lock. Get some dummy lineups in, everybody. Is there anybody kind of on the cheaper end of forward? We talked about a lot of these main guys. Serge Ibaka is just eating up so many of those cheap spots for forward. Now we're getting Obi Toppin. It feels pretty clear cut where we've got some of those punts down there. Of course, LeBron on the top end. This whole mid-range is just getting absolutely no love outside of Norman Powell and Jaron Jackson Jr., who, I never feel good rostering that guy. But how about a guy like Cam Reddish? He just got done, burning the entire universe. How about a guy like Lauri Markkanen, who, there's a number of these bigs. I don't know what those minutes are going to look like, but against Atlanta, small front court, Capella's going to have to play a bunch of minutes. Is there anything else that you're mining out in like the 5, 6, 7K range on DraftKings or FanDuel for the forward spot?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys worth consideration in that range. And we've seen lineups with that construction kind of win out over the last few days in some of these places where it seemed like more Starsy Scrubsy would take the day. Some of these mid-range guys do still have a lot of value, whether you're building it into that construction or a mid-range or more middle type approach. So guys like Kyle Anderson could definitely be interesting for 5K. You mentioned Cam Reddish, and I mentioned him before. You mentioned Jaron Jackson, so did I. I think Lauri Markkanen, definitely interesting. I threw Kevin Love into that mix earlier at 6,700. You get him at power forward and center. Any one of those guys could deliver value. Keldon Johnson is a guy that I wrote about this afternoon. I love him at 5,900 on the DK slate. A little bit less exciting at 64 on FanDuel, power forward and small forward over there, but I think he's definitely viable on both sites. Nas Little, it's 6,300 on the FanDuel slate. I like him better at 5,400 on the DK slate. Definitely a guy who's in play in that Portland rotation over there. Terrence Mann could see some minutes in that Clippers rotation. There's a lot of different guys that you can rotate spots and just kind of mix and match these plays with the premium values and the premium stars. Create a little bit of a rotation of stars, book the Ibaka value, book the Toppin value, and then rotate some of these guys through it. And that's really, I think, how we're getting to the mix today. So it's really about those guys that I just called out in the mid-range there.
So on Yahoo, I don't forget about EMAC 2024. I would never forget about EMAC 2024. He asked Serge Ibaka, if you're playing one lineup, Serge Ibaka, $10 power forward, or Obi Toppin, $10 power forward, you have to pick one.
have to pick one. Ooh.
I know it's an awful feeling. I like the idea of playing both. So can we go with option C?
Yeah, if I could go with option C and build them both in and get a little bit of value and then pay up for some stars on in other spots, I would gladly do that.
Yeah,
just on the fact that the top end is a little bit more late breaking news and Ibaka has been talked about on all sites all day long. I would probably go that route and hope that I'm getting a little bit of an ownership discount and similar production. It's a little bit riskier, but I think that's the approach that I would take.
You and I are on the same page with that. Look at you, sharp as it comes, especially when you literally have my take. That's when it's like you're at your sharpest. No doubt about it. I'm sarcastic because I'm making fun of myself. Kevin Love can't really do that anymore here on this slate. I thought that would be fun once upon a time. Jared Allen, not going to really be getting there over on the FanDuel or DK slate. Rip City to that. Anything else before we go to center here with the last 10 minutes?
I'm just looking through some of these lineups that are coming up in this crunch.
Yeah, me too.
Man, am I getting a lot of heat and a lot of Portland in all of these lineups on FanDuel. So it's kind of an interesting situation there. And then just trying to figure out what's actually going to go into the tournament here.
All righty, let's go to the center spot. Round it out here. We'll have a little time for questions here at the very end. And then we've got the 30 minutes to chat Yahoo. Really what matters is that you get lineups, you get the exposure to the Miami Houston guys. I want to touch on that game. I think that that's going to be something I do on more live before locks going forward. That first game, when it locks, that's the only players that we're losing. So we want to make sure that we have our ownership tight on those players. We want to make sure that, we kind of have the right guys pinballed in our lineups, make sure that our builds look good for those. And we continue on with our day, especially if you're playing 20, 40, 150 lineups. That's something that I found very useful with my process. I want to help you guys talk through some of those decision points. So we'll cover that game a little bit more in depth at the last 2-3 minutes, as well as questions. But at the center spot, conversation just really ends with Omer Yurtseven. Miami, he's starting. Love to see that. Make sure that these guys are starting. You just never know. He's had 2 starts here now. Performed pretty darn decently. He's still sub 6K. What are you doing with such a popular piece of chalk on this slate?
I like the idea of Yurtseven here. I'm trying to find some lineups that have him included in significant portions. He's definitely coming up. Allegedly, he's in 52% of these. He just wasn't in a lot of them up at the top of the way I was sorting it.
Allegedly.
So I hope that that's true, and he's in here, and I'm going to have some of them because I do like the spot a lot. 6,100 on FanDuel, 5,800 even more to like on the DK slate. 30+% optimal on DK with appropriate ownership. That's definitely a good go-to spot. 1.09 fantasy points per minute for the season, 1.202 over the last 3 games, but definitely some upside there. So I like getting to that. And he's a guy that has been a value piece for the Heat all day that's not going to be impacted by the return of Butler and Lowry to that rotation so as much as the guys in the backcourt there. So definitely a guy I want to go to. You've got all the Ibaka shares, of course, at center because he's power forward and center, but you can put those guys together if you wanted to with the positional flexibility on Ibaka.
All right. Yeah, Yurtseven, I find him hard to get away from over on DK. I think on FanDuel, you can make a case for when you're only playing one center, finding paths. And that's something I'm trying to do more on that site. Again, on Yahoo, you're able to play 2. Kind of want to be playing more Yurtseven in that spot. I think it makes a lot more sense when he projects out, as a near 6x value over on FanDuel. That's going to be something you probably want to get to. But there's a guy named Clint Capella, and I'm obsessed with him today. He's 8K. He's 1,100 cheaper over on FanDuel than Rudy Gobert. Over on the DraftKings slate, he's what is his exact ownership here at the moment? Because it wasn't remotely close before. Yeah, he's sub 12%. He's 8,300. And that looks brutal. Like FanDuel, I think it's a lot easier to jam a bunch of him. But even on DK, where you're rostering, you can get to 2 centers, having some Yurtseven and get some Clint Capella. I like getting to him a lot more than getting up to Gobert or Siakam, even Christian Wood. Like those guys, those are kind of 3 players that I'm really not getting to in my limited DK lineups. Or, I have a lot more DK lineups. So 44 over there, playing like 20 over on FanDuel here today. But I'm looking at these assortments and I just have well over 40% Clint Capella here. Is he somebody that you've looked at whatsoever on this slate?
Yeah, he was somebody I was looking at early in the day. I kind of put him in there as, hey, this will be a differentiated kind of a play. Let me see what it looks like when I build lineups out from here. And based on some of the values that we're getting at the center spot and the ability to move power forward and center around a little bit, I was just kind of getting a lot of lineups that fell around him rather than getting to him. But I think that makes him appealing as like an anti-optimizer kind of a play that maybe people aren't going to as much on the FanDuel slate. And it's borne out by our ownership projections, under 15% ownership on both sites. He's got appeal. By fantasy point per minute production, he is the 6th overall producer on the slate. But there are guys who are projected for 15 minutes, 14 minutes with Jock Landale and Hassan Whiteside ahead of him here. That he's actually like the 3rd or 4th most productive center in terms of points per minute on the slate, and he's not getting owned like it. So I like that play. I think it's worth getting to. I think the matchup is strong for him here. So it's definitely a play I'm going to try and force and grab a couple shares as we're talking about it.
All right. He's just a guy I think has to play a boatload of minutes. Blowout last game. I don't think people understand how many minutes he was probably on path for with the lack of bigs in that rotation. So for me, it's an investment in minutes. It's an investment in, an obviously gigantic Cleveland front court, number of guys that he could be matching up with in any given spot. He's really all that Atlanta's got here at the moment. So I'm looking at him as a core piece for my lineups for tournaments. He's sub 15%. I'm just going to be massively over on every site. I'm definitely going to be rolling with him in my main Yahoo lineup here too. I'm just kind of double checking to make sure that I've got everything kind of in place there. Jakku Portal, somebody that's getting brought up in chat. There are other Spurs you can definitely take shots on in this Memphis game. And I mean, the Spurs have a 111 total here in this spot. So by all means, fire up a lot of these guys. Keldon Johnson, we talked about. Derek White is obviously a talking point here as well. Not really getting to the Devin Vassals or, the whoever it was here of days of yore. Bryn Forbes, definitely no for me. But at the center spot, Jakku Portal makes some sense. Are you getting to any of him on this slate?
Did you just refer to like 3 days ago as days of yore?
I don't know, whatever. It feels like that. I'm tired. I'm very, very tired. It's been a week, Terry.
I got nailed with while I was watching the previous show. I just had a wave, and not because of those guys. Man. They did a killer job, but I was sitting here like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk for this next slate.
Terry, you're the hardest working man at Awesemo. Just get out of here.
Now you can't shut me up, but I do like Jakku Portal here. I think he makes a lot of sense. 6,000 on FanDuel, 6,100 on DK. The only thing I don't like is the FanDuel center only eligibility. Right. But there's enough guys with power forward eligibility that you can put next to him and get to most of those center optimal plays that I think he's got value, and probably not enough people getting to him. He's slightly negatively leveraged, which is, doesn't really make sense with what I just said. But in terms of the overall raw ownership, it's under 15% on both sides. So there's a good reason to go to him.
All right, 2 quick super chats. So answer these super fast. Malachur, can you give advice on head-to-head hand build lineups? Yeah, I can absolutely do that. I mean, it helps to have projections. I would still be hand building along with my projections. I think that that's something that I tend to do quite a bit with Awesemo's projections. Works out really, really nicely. Is there anything you do specifically, Terry, for hand builds for head-to-heads?
Yeah, that's not play head-to-heads. I'm not big on cash games, but when but every single day, the good answer is every single day, I do build my first lineup by hand. I put our boom bust tool up. Either I do that and just do it on my phone, or I put our boom bust tool next to our lineup builder tool, and I just work within those guys. And for cash games, I just want to be focused on that optimal lineup column, and I'm just grabbing the most frequently optimal plays. You can follow along with the ownership. The most popular guys work well for cash, so you don't really have to worry about all the plays where you're getting cute and all the pivots and the ownership and the leverage so much. Just get to the frequently optimal plays.
All right. That's great advice. I'm with you there. I had way too much Pangos in that last run. That's just the way it is. I'm real forever. You're at 7 or Nance on FanDuel.
You're at 7 or Nance?
Yes.
Both, and they play different positions.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have that really in my head as a head-to-head.
Yeah.
Both of them have good value on and are coming up significantly optimal on the site. So
I'm guessing there might be another 2v2 where he doesn't really care about it irregardless. So I'm just looking at it as like, if you're just looking at him straight up for me, I think you're at 7 because he's at the center spot where there's other centers that I'm trying to mix in because of how popular I expect him to be. I'm probably going to tell you Nance.
That's fine. I have no issue with that.
Okay, cool. 2 minutes. Make sure you have your lineups in, everybody. Yeah, as I promised, let's talk about this Heat game here in the last waning seconds that we have going here before we jump over and talk a little bit of Yahoo here. But Jimmy Butler, how much of him are you getting to across the industry today?
I would expect he is close to 100% in these 30 lineups I'm about to drop in. I was getting him all kinds of crazy on this FanDuel slate. He started coming up like crazy for me once we had him confirmed in. So, yeah, he's a big part of my day today.
He's a big part of mine here as well.
Here.
I'd say $46 on Yahoo, probably the one place. I mean, he's in one of my big lineups over there, so I'm still getting to some. It's just a little bit more prohibitive is the right word of saying it. Donovan Mitchell, we talked about a little bit earlier, everybody. Donovan Mitchell, he's fine. He's not going to, beat the slate to death. Like I feel okay with him, just not like the priority for me on this slate whatsoever.
I had a few shares, not a ton. A guy that I bet you I have a lot more of than you do is Jarrett Allen, because he cost 10,500 on the DK slate. He's 7,700 on the FanDuel slate.
Yeah, I saw that number this morning. Well, I saw it last night on the Slate Starter Pod with Ryan, and I just kind of giggled. I giggled a little bit because it's like, when has he ever paid that off? Sean Preston, Happy New Year. Hey, Happy New Year to you too as well, Sean. 1 minute. He's good, people. I also now know his age because he put that into YouTube chat. So that's great. But we were just talking NFTs, and that's kind of how it was not a non sequitur by any means. Oh, look at that word of the day. I don't even know if I used it correctly. I just know that it's a real word.
No, I
think I did too. We're at lock, everybody. This is
so fantastic. He wasn't just apropos of nothing like, hey, I'm 37. Here's $5. Happy New Year. It was actually related to the NFTs conversation.
Yeah. All right. I've got two questions here. There is no such thing as irregardless. I didn't even know that I said that, but whatever. Morgan Smith, thoughts on playing two stars on the same team, Westbrook, LeBron, or Gobert, Spida? I really never put a rule against it. I'll probably have it happen a lot.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. That said, the Westbrook-LeBron combination is one that I would probably put further down the list of combinations I would want to get to. But I wouldn't have a problem with it if it's coming up. I think in the 30 lineups I threw in on FanDuel, I think I actually had it in one. So it's not something I'm blocking. I make very few rules. I block out very little in terms of the optimizer. I like to let the optimizer optimize. So that's how I kind of take that's the approach I take.
All right. We got Pangos, Okoro, Markkanen, Mobley, and Allen for the Cavs starting lineup. Pangos.
I thought that was going to be either or.
Whoa. God. Yeah. Just give you a quick 5v5 for your pleasure, for your light entertainment here. Pangos, we're still going to have a little Pangos, right?
Yeah. I think he makes sense. He was showing some strong value still. Every time I hear his name, I think of Randy Marsh from the South Park special and 100 million simulations. Okay. And I put that pangolin every single time.
So we are the sea otters. That's all I think about the South Park specials. Oh man, the Sea Otter episode. I think about that one really, really frequently, but also I think about Yahoo frequently because it is the best site you can be playing on for your money, bar none. They're $15 today. I mean, it was just a little bit short of full, but I'm telling you right now, lowest management fees, period, bar none. Jam that place for NFL. You need to be playing a lot of your NFL exposure there. It doesn't get better than that. Quickly, while we're jumping into Yahoo as well, Jackson, Kennard, Mann, Morris, Ibaka starting. Just fire up Ibaka here. He's gonna have to play a ton of minutes, no doubt about it here. Y'all skip my super chat, $10. What did we skip? I didn't miss anything, did I? Oh man, I didn't notice that. Mitchell Hero, Kemba Butler. We had so many different super chats coming in. I apologize if I did not get to anything there. A lot of different starting lineups to react to. A lot of news here kind of coming out with this Miami game, specifically kind of looking at some of these guys. But the losers win again. Put your question in. I'll answer it here right now as we jump over to Yahoo. But I'm looking over here at the Yahoo slate. I will tell you, I said one of my big lineups here. Russell Westbrook, Caleb Martin, Donovan Mitchell, Jimmy Butler, Obi Toppin, Serge Ibaka, Clint Capella, Norman Powell. We just got word Evan Fournier's in. Crap. Terry, nothing like losing money live on a live before lock because, whatever. I would probably have had a little bit more of Miami had I not just taken the shot that was going to happen. But plenty of guys that I can get to here. Obviously, a lot of Serge Ibaka. I can get to a lot of Portland pieces. It's not the end of the world. I just know the way that my spreadsheet works. It definitely would have had a lot more Miami than it did outside of just Jimmy Butler in the event that I had that news. But what do you kind of think about Evan Fournier expected to play?
I think it just diminishes the potential for those other plays that we talked about, takes a little bit of shine off of Alec Burks, certainly Emmanuel Quickly. The idea of those guys getting to any kind of a ceiling game is somewhat erased. I would not be going to Evan Fournier. He has not been a good Knick. He has not been a good fantasy producer this season. He's a guy who's produced in spots, but certainly a letdown this year. Not a guy for me that would be on the board. It wouldn't impact plays in the starting lineup. Like I would still be going to some Obi shares. I would still be going to some RJ Barrett shares. I wouldn't really sweat the Evan Fournier coming back, impacting the guys in the starting lineup. But those guys that we were expecting some potential cheap bench run from, definitely going to downturn them.
Are you still going to have any interest in Kemba Walker? Which brings me to the super chat. The unstoppable Nilo Nowhere. Mitchell and Hero or Kemba Butler on FD. Thank you. We thank you. And again, I'm sorry if you ended up on a 2v2 there in some kind of a spot with Hero Butler. That one obviously just locked. That was the first game right off the bat here. But do you have anything to say about Kemba here? Because for me, I feel like his minutes are very unpredictable in this spot. I have him in for 30. Awesemo has him in for 30. I think you can expect 30. That was a wonky game against Detroit. I'm trying to write that off as much as possible, but even at 30 minutes, I'm not going to really get to him at that current number. Are you?
Probably not. I have some shares of them in my lineups. We'll see how that goes over the next little bit if I take him out. 33.7 minute projection. He was 19% optimal, but negatively leveraged to a really significant degree. If I'd run this properly through my process, I probably wouldn't have gotten him. It was just by virtue of doing it through Fantasy Cruncher that I've got some shares. So I think I'm probably going to look to bail. It's not necessarily because of the Fournier news as much as it is I just don't love the play and how he's been used this season, what he's produced this season, outside of the few outlier spots where he's had really strong games in recent run. I don't love it. There's plenty for him to do. Don't get me wrong. Taking Randle off the court, like I mentioned for somebody else earlier, you're taking the Knicks' biggest facilitator off the court. I just don't love the Kemba play. It could definitely come back and he could go out and triple-double Kemba again and be a relevant player.
God.
It's just not exciting. It's not one that I want to go out of my way for. And I think the field is there. So it's just, I'd rather be somewhere else.
I lost so much money on Kemba in the bubble. It's redonkulous. Like, I could not give up on Kemba. I love Kemba Walker so much. It was so nice to get paid off a little bit. And then, of course, he's like super, super chalk. And I'm like, all right, Kemba, Christmas, chill out. Don't go nuts. Like almost full faded. Triple doubles with like a 10-10-10 line. Like, what are we doing here? That was just so gross. You enjoyed it though.
You got the invite to my we signed Kemba Walker party that I had in the offseason this past year. Kemba plus Julius Randle plus Derrick Rose. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, yeah,
2020 Julius Randle as opposed to 2021 Julius Randle. The Atlanta Hawks have a piece of real estate in Julius Randle's brain, and it like exposed Julius Randle a little bit.
Sure did.
It was gross.
Didn't stop the Knicks from giving him a nice contract, but yeah, that's what happens when you rely on Julius. But yeah, I think Kemba can finish out the year in New York as a somewhat productive guard. I don't know if the Knicks are going to the playoffs, but I think he can be somewhat productive for DFS purposes. But I want him at less ownership and a cheaper price than this when I get to him. Even $6,000 on FanDuel at 27% ownership, it's just not there for me. 7,000 on DK, 12% owned. No thanks.
All right. Well, we got 6 games coming up here, and let's talk some Yahoo. Once again, deposit $10 or more, you'll get 1 free month of Awesemo plus Platinum. Simple as that. That's just an offer I'm going to keep saying over and over until you sign up. You need to. Everybody, 1.5K people hanging out here, hit the like button. Again, we'll be reacting to news. We'll be talking about anything that happens here from that Miami-Houston game. But first question, I think that this is a great way to jump into the guard position. We've got from James Getty, favorite $10 guards on Yahoo. If you go by our value chart over on Fantasy Cruncher, we've got guys like Isaac Okoro, Skylar Mays. I mean, they're going to pale in comparison to the forward $10 plays where we listed off Serge Ibaka, Obi Toppin. But if you're trying to get different in a tournament, is there a $10 guard that you might take a shot on in tournaments? I've got a guy, and I'm curious if we have the same guy.
Let me take a look here on the old board for Yahoo. Who's your guy? Because I'm at $10.
My guy would be Joe Ingles. So he's been just very, very erratic. He started the last 2 games here. I mean, Donovan Mitchell comes back in, but you get rid of Mike Conley here in this spot. And, the other 2 guys, we're looking at Pangos, and we're talking about everything being a neutral 3K play, looking at them straight up. Like you've got Okoro, Skylar Mays, Joe Ingles, Kevin Pangos, Lou Williams, Tyus Jones. Like those are your only like 6 players that are remotely in play at that $10 guard spot. You could maybe, Trey Jones is not in play. Let's not talk about him. Let's definitely not talk about Paul Watson ever. But Isaac Okoro is going to play a bunch of minutes. 33 is our projection on him. He's at 9%. But if you're talking about a lineup in tournaments, Joe Ingles, I think, can go out, at least spike some other stats to go along with some scoring here. He's not been good this year, but I don't really care. I think at 2% in tournaments, I'd be more willing to go his direction at a $10 play than Isaac Okoro, where I kind of know what that ceiling looks like. And by the way, it's non-existent.
Interesting. So Ingles, to your point, not been good this year. 0.52 fantasy points per minute over the last 3, 0.71 for the season. It's a guy who was at 0.87 on somewhat similar usage last season. It's just kind of fallen off the shelf. And he's a guy that I'd like to get to, capable guy in multi-category fantasy scoring, but it just hasn't been there. But I would take that shot again. I mean, he's a guy I've relied on enough that I don't think the talent has just totally gone away throughout the course of the season. So if you're throwing a $10 dart, I don't mind that. Looking at the other guys available, you mentioned Okoro. Your guy, Lou Williams, I was going to kind of just throw into the mix there since he's got no ownership to speak of at the $10 price. If you wanted to take a shot at that, I wouldn't totally hate it. Tyus Jones maybe is somewhat interesting in that same situation where it's a total dart throw for no ownership whatsoever, and a guy we've got projected at 20 Yahoo points in the median. So that's the kind of thing that you're doing when you go to that level, is you're just throwing darts at these median projections. The guy with the highest projection would be Okoro in that group. So if you just want to ride Alex's projection, go to that. But he's, to your point, about 10% owned. So that's probably going to be negatively leveraged. We don't have a leverage score on the Yahoo slate, but that would be the negative leverage play. The other guys probably positively leveraged dart throws.
Let's talk about some of the more popular guard plays, because we've established the $10 range there doesn't look very good compared to the $10 range at forward. You can probably find some spend ups here, and boy, do we have some. Damian Lillard, 38.6% there at his $38 tag. Derek White, very, very popular, $28. Probably would want to shy away from that one again. I'm just hoping he doesn't completely burn me, but Betty White day, Derek White day. There's got to be some correlation there. Russell Westbrook, though, that is my guy. $35 over here on Yahoo. I'm not playing him really on any of the other sites, so that's another reason you should be playing at Yahoo. Different pricing, opportunity to get shares of other players, different builds. It's a different puzzle to get to put together every single day, and I really enjoy that. Yahoo's just so different in their pricing. And so Russell Westbrook, 32%. I want more than that. How about you, Terry?
Yeah, that one makes a ton of sense to me. You compare Russ to Trey Young, $10 price difference for, a similar projection, let's say. It's a 4 fantasy point projection difference in the median. I like going to Russ Westbrook there. I've got faith, multi-category guy across the board. We've seen him average a triple-double multiple times. I have no issues going to Russ at what I perceive to be a bit of a discount. Dame at the top of the board, similar story, $38, a little bit more expensive than Russ, but cheaper than Trey, cheaper than John Morant for a guy that I kind of want to get to anyway. So I really like that. 44% boom score probability on Dame Lillard. Positively leveraged if you do the math, comparing the boom score to the ownership in lieu of comparing the optimal lineup rate. We can kind of do that. It's a little bit of a cheat. It's not exactly the same thing, but I think there's opportunity there for a ceiling score versus where he's getting owned. So I do like the Dame play as well.
All right. I think this lineup is what I expected from Atlanta, even though it just looks so weird because Skylar Mays and Wes Iwundu are in it. But we've got Trey Young, Mays, Iwundu, Reddish, Capella. I don't think anything really changes for me. I still like Capella. I still like Trey Young, where he's not 11-5 over on DK. That is looking at you, FanDuel. Definitely a better spot to be playing him. And then $45 on Yahoo. I think you can still find paths to getting there. Maybe not at the 20.8% we're projecting him for, but that starting lineup looks about what we expect. The losers win again. Give us a $10 super chat. And I apologize. I don't know how I missed it. We were kind of flying. Again, very sporadic days here in the NBA streets. No doubt about it. We're doing the best that we can. But his question, if you could fill it in Lillard, Morant, and LeBron, would you play? Would you play and had one spot left? Okay, so Lillard, Morant, LeBron, and you have one spot at the small forward position with 3,900 on DK. Who would you take? So we're looking at the DK slate. We're going to find a small forward specifically that is 3,500 or under, which is a very specific ask. So we can do that here. Looking at
3,500 or 3,900?
3,900, excuse me. 3,900 and down. There we go. For me, Doug McDermott, it doesn't feel good. Yeah. I will say Chaundi Brown is like completely off the board for me, not starting. So legitimately gone.
I don't have our latest, our update after we got the news on him, but what about Nwaba for 3,800? I don't have the update in terms of the optimal in front of me or anything like that, but it's a name we talked about. It's a guy who's around a fantasy point per minute producer, like 0.99 for him versus 0.67 for Dougie McBucket.
Yeah, but that game already locked, so we can't do it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, that's okay. Oh, dang it. Oh, look at that. Such is life.
Yeah.
Such is life. Looking at
McDermott just on the minutes projection, really, for me then.
Yeah, it's got to be. That's got to be it. Oh, news guy, he's hitting me up with something. Joe Ingles is out tonight with a low back strain. Late news here on the Live Before Lock show, after show. Yahoo After Dark, if you will. I think that's kind of a fun branding idea. We could find that. Have the black and the purple. Goes together well when it's not on Minnesota Viking jerseys because we freaking suck. And now we don't have Kirk Cousins against Green Bay and I want to cry. But anyway, back to basketball.
Let's look at that from the questions angle, though. Does that suddenly make Rudy Gay the answer to that question at small forward for 3,600 on DraftKings?
I think it does. I think that's exactly what it does. So I'm just kind of looking at my minutes projections here. That's lovely. Again, thank you so much to Loco. Just firing that in there. I think he beat everywhere else and there it is. He's just a stud. He's an absolute stud. Well done, Loco. Appreciate you, my guy. Let's see. So that's taking some minutes off the board. By the way, don't roster Joe Ingles as a $10 guard. That should go without saying. Just wanted to double back on that take. This is the moment, though, when somebody would leave the chat and then they will go back on Twitter and let me know what a dunce cap I am. So similar to the Nas Reed conversation where I had 0%, 0% Nas Reed. Just hold that L, chat. Hold that L.
I can vouch for that. I was here.
Four people came at me about that. It was like 14 people, but I digress. I had 0%. I was egging them on. So whatever.
But I will say, Gay, 20.5 minutes was the previous projection before we got that Ingles news. So expect that goes up. And he was actually out of those guys in the sub 3,900 range. He was the most optimal before we got that news. So I expect that's the answer to that question for that person out there and somebody that you can plug into some lineups for value now.
This is kind of fascinating. Like this is an interesting piece to lose because as far as his utility, he started the last two games here. You got Donovan Mitchell back. I assume that Donovan Mitchell just replaces Joe Ingles and you get like the identical lineup here. But Jordan Clarkson in utility duty here, as well as like a guy like Bojan Bogdanovic, should get a couple more minutes here if that game stays remotely competitive. But somebody that I always take shots on. I always take shots on Whiteside in this kind of a situation. More of a late slate play, 4,100. We don't want to go crazy. This is not Christmas Day 5-gamer. This is a 7-gamer with plenty of value. But Jordan Clarkson, Bojan Bogdanovic, I'm thinking they're going to get a little bit of a bump for me. How about for you, Terry?
Yeah, I tell you what, Jordan Clarkson at 18 on the Yahoo board was actually looking a little bit interesting before that news. He was coming up 19% boom score probability, kind of in the mid-range by boom score, 14% owned. So there's a little bit of room on that ceiling score as in terms of how frequently he's getting owned. In the median, he was at a 28.6 point projection. You got to expect that that's going to go up into the 30+ range now. So I like that Clarkson play as a potentially sneaky value play at $18 on the Yahoo slate.
I just read a Greg Monroe question from David Traub. Am I crazy? Jared Vanderbilt is playing basketball tonight. We do not need to roster Greg Monroe. As much as that sounds lovely, and I would love the story and whatever else, 25, 22 minutes, there is no way that he is going to be playing very much whatsoever. We have him projected for under 3 minutes. Do not play Monroe. Does he get good play tonight? No, he does not get good play. I'm a Timberwolves guy. I would be shocked with Jared Vanderbilt returning with Nas Reed now. I'm assuming he's going to play more than the 12 minutes we saw against the Knicks coming back. We've got Jaden McDaniels coming, into the picture here. He can play a little bit bigger there as well. He's been playing the 4 quite a bit here in the relief of all these guys. I don't know what to tell you, but like legitimately, do not roster Greg Monroe at all costs.
2.7 minute projection, 2.56 fantasy point projection. Don't put that in your lineup.
Do you like Rudy Gay or Obi Toppin more on DK? I still like Obi Toppin way more.
100% agreed.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to get all of those down. All right, we'll get back to that Utah news here in a second, but let's finish up guard here on the Utah, because there's Freud just owning real estate in my head
now. Same sound. It's Utah, Yahoo, it's all the same.
Whatever. We've got all these spend ups here. If you're not going to go to Trey Young here at $45, John Morant 40, there's this tier of like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Damian Lillard. He's too popular to go into this question. Fred VanVleet's $36. We've got EMAC over there in the chat. I don't know. Something tells me that Fred VanVleet might play a lot more minutes than what we could be expecting. Now, I prefer Russell Westbrook at $35, but he's also literally like 5 times more popular than what Fred VanVleet is. Are you willing to maybe take a shot on the unknown of what those minutes could look like?
Yeah, if I'm building a lot of lineups for a Yahoo tournament, I would certainly be willing to take some shots. It might not be my one lineup dart throw, mix and match kind of a play that gets me different on a pay up option. 5% ownership, you gotta like that on a guy like Fred VanVleet, who could certainly bend a slate anytime. But can I have $2 more and get to SGA at 1% ownership? I kind of like that a little bit better. So it depends on where we're going, what we're doing with that money. If I'm spending $10 less and taking a 9% owned Tyler Hero, am I taking that much of a dip in my my points expectation versus the ownership? I don't know that I am. So it really depends on what we're doing with the money, either when we're saving it or when we're spending it. I don't mind getting to VanVleet there, but it wouldn't be top of my list.
Yeah, Monroe for Time Lord. Yeah, you should just not be playing Greg Monroe. That sounds madness. Also, Time Lord isn't on this slate. Celtics, they're not on the main slate. I don't know what we're looking at. But here we go.
All day, I guess. Yeah, but that would block already.
Does Birch get good play today? No, Birch should not be playing a lot for Toronto. I expect him to play a little bit. Obviously, you don't have Scotty Barnes there yet, but OG Anunoby is, and that's going to create a whole problem for Chris Boucher. And a lot of this front court is just going to look very, very different. Precious Achiuwa. I don't know what those minutes are going to look like, but I can guarantee you, Kem Birch, not the guy I want to be going ham with, like whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to get to Toronto there, and I forgot I had everything sorted to the 3,000 salaries, so nobody was on my board. But yeah, Kem Birch was 21.6 minute projection, comes up dead. It's a total flat line on both sites. 0.2% optimal on FanDuel, 0.6%. We can do better.
All right. And definitely the second one, David, if you're playing on Yahoo, it's going to be Birch and Kemba, Kemba and Gay. I like Gay quite a bit, but I'm not going to like him over Toppin. And then let's talk Kemba Walker. I think he's the last piece I really want to talk about here at guard. We've got 9 minutes left. We'll jump over to the forward spot, but the Joe Ingles news, definitely a nice piece to talk about a little bit on Yahoo, considering I literally brought up his name and then he gets knocked out. I might have the kiss of death here today on the 31st. I shouldn't say Derek White because Betty White. Yeah, I was going to say, I tell you what, that's dark.
A buddy of mine has been claiming in our text message group on these last 2 major deaths that he caused them both because he had been on a big rant while watching the John Madden documentary the other day about how Madden hung on. And then he was talking about Betty White's upcoming documentary today. So, yeah, don't cross my friend Charlie. Apparently he's got power.
All right, Charlie. Steering clear of all Charlies in my life here for a while. Kemba Walker, though, is $18 on the Yahoo slate. That's a fantastic number to be looking at. Yeah. That's somebody I want to be invested in. That's the last thing to really touch on. Let's jump to forward here. On the top end, we've got some popular options, specifically Obi Toppin. 36%, that's too low. I want more than that. Nasir Little, sitting at $14, that's too low. I want more than 30% of him. Serge Ibaka, 27%. I am more than happy to just eat all of the chalk here, even a $53 LeBron, which is over 25% of your total salary cap on Yahoo. But with this abundance of $10 options, I'm less inclined. I think going Toppin and then Ibaka and LeBron is going to be primarily the most popular way, but no doubt about it, I really like doing that. Anybody that you might be lower on amongst those 4?
I think that's a great group. It's a great core of guys to start a lineup on Yahoo and then just think about getting different elsewhere. And we've already talked about a few of those differentiator type plays. So yeah, when you can book a $10 Ibaka and a $10 Obi, and then go directly to the prime stud on the board and go to LeBron. It's pretty easy to do here. A 27.14% boom score probability, despite that massive price tag on LeBron, 30% ownership. There's no reason not to like him in this spot. So I like getting to that. Nance and both Nance and Norm Powell are both very interesting, as is Nas Little on this slate. And they're at kind of a spectrum of salaries ranging from $23 down to $14. So you can get any one of those guys as a rotational piece to build into that lineup as well if you need a little additional savings there, or you pay up for one of the other options. Like whichever one fits into your lineup there, you can just go with that option from the Portland side. So I like that just rotation of pieces at different prices that they're providing today.
Yeah, and if you landed on Jimmy Butler, again, I listed off the one lineup that I have going for a couple of these bigger tournaments. I've got another one that, I've just got to do some tweaks to and figure out what to do, but it's all going to be late exposure. I'm not going to have any pieces of that Atlanta, Cleveland, and Clippers, Toronto game in that main one. I'm going to try to mix and match after the show and figure out what to do with these damn dirty Knicks that I have everywhere that I need to get rid of. But I'm looking at the rest of the forward spot. Jimmy Butler, sure, you can spend up for him at $46. Pivot off of LeBron James. Obviously, he's $7 cheaper, so might give you a little bit more utility there. But with only 3 forward spots, it's really hard for me to get away from the chalk there. Anybody here from the 10 to 20% range in our projections that is somebody that you might be looking at saying, hey, if I'm making 20, 30 lineups over on Yahoo, I want to get over the field on this guy.
I tell you what, a guy who's got a decently high price at $35, but no ownership at 3.6% ownership that I might get invested in on the Yahoo slate over a few shares is Anthony Edwards. I think I'd rather get to $35 Anthony Edwards than $33 Pascal Siakam at 5 times the ownership at 15% ownership. I just think that's an interesting spot that nobody's going to in terms of a guy who can certainly score the basketball, rack up the fantasy points pretty quickly for us. So I would throw him in there as an under-owned pay-up option. And then outside of him, I'm looking at guys like Keldon Johnson, who we talked about across sites. Only $20 for Keldon with only 13% ownership. He's definitely interesting to me there. Lauri Markkanen, somewhat interesting for $15, but the ownership's kind of on him. Some of the other moving parts that we've talked about, RJ Barrett at $19 is fine. Kyle Anderson at $16 is okay. I think that's appropriate. I'd prefer to pay 17 at a little bit more ownership for Cam Reddish. I think he's interesting there. So some of those guys I would be working in. Jaron Jackson certainly at $23 is a little bit more expensive than those other guys and a little bit more owned, but he's a guy who can go out there and produce for us. So if you're not going to the Ibaka and Obi Toppin, maybe you can go to some shares of Jaron Jackson as a little bit of a differentiated play with some upside in that power forward spot.
First time I played Jalen Green, 2 fouls in 6 minutes. Yeah, he'll do that. Oh. Yeah, that guy's a something. I'd already dropped him earlier I always like the prospective rookie ads with a couple of my home leagues, because I've been in a father-son league for legitimately 16 years with my dad. We've been doing fantasy basketball, which is pretty cool to think about. They still make us do all of our waiver ads on Friday, and you have to send them by email. So how about a carrier pigeon, everybody? Well, whatever. Not that I'm bitter about that. It's just everybody else does it online. Why can't we? Because it has to stay the way that it's been for 16 years.
Tradition's important, my friend. That's why I still see my buddy Lou's parents once a year at our fantasy football draft after all these years, because it's got to take place at his parents' house every year.
As long as it's not your buddy Charlie. Let's keep it moving here. The center position. Let's round this out. 4 minutes to go here. Top end, no doubt about it. Over on Yahoo. Oh, Kemba Walker ruled out. 4 minutes. Boom. All right. Well, here we go. Love you, Yahoo. This is really fun. Ooh. But Kemba Walker is out. Emmanuel quickly. First guy you should just be firing up here in bulk.
Yep. Match that quickly.
I'm going to jam him into every lineup that I humanly possibly can. I'm just hitting the lock button on him on every site.
Yeah, mash the quickly button, and don't sleep on the Alec Burks button either, because Burks can certainly fill those point guard minutes and handle the ball. So,
all right, so watch this, Terry. This is what I'm going to do. We partner with Yahoo Fantasy in the NBA season to bring you a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, which you do. Deposit $10 or more as a new Yahoo user. Get $10 free credit bonus, plus an additional $25 when you make your first deposit with Yahoo 10 Sunday Yahoo, featuring the $1 million baller contest. I already alluded to that tournament. It's the best tournament in the industry for NFL Sundays, bar none. $20, negative 25% management fee. That is also known as rake. 200K overlay. No wonder. It's the best place to go. Stop guessing. Start winning. Join Awesemo Plus through this Yahoo promotion. See what I did there, everybody? I can do it. All right. We're going to breathe here. We got 3 minutes. Talk me through this, because now Evan Fournier is in. We lost Kemba Walker. This is just absolutely bonkers. What a way to close out live before locks. I would expect nothing less than something just truly ridiculous to come out with 33 minutes here. Again, I want to get this in now because I don't want to lose roster spots to Atlanta, Cleveland, and Clippers, Toronto. I'm right back on the Knicks bandwagon. Woo!
Yeah. Lucky us. Everybody gets to ride and die with the Knicks. And it's not ride or die, it's ride and die with the Knicks. But yeah, I think it's the guys we just singled out there, right? It's, obviously you don't want to go to Evan Fournier, really. Maybe a couple dart throw shares as a guy who can score the ball from time to time, but he's uninspiring. I think Alec Burks is a way to go on the FanDuel slate. I just noticed he's 7,300 on DK, so I don't love it over there. But quickly at 4,600 on the DK slate is the guy to go to, point guard and shooting guard eligible. Totally workable on the FanDuel slate at 5,100 as well. Those are the primary focuses for me, along with the guys who were already in the starting lineup.
I mean, I'm going to get to zero Alec Burks at 7,300 over on DK.
Yeah.
Just it's still not going to happen for me
whatsoever.
But
I hadn't noticed that price. Yeah, that's
it's absurd. So do not play Alec Burks over there. I find that to be egregious. But RJ Barrett, we haven't even talked about. He sees a little bit of a bump here, goes from a 0.82, just a little bit above it, 0.87. So I like RJ Barrett without Kemba Walker on the floor. That could be a little important to talk about. Evan Fournier, don't sleep on him either. Not saying that he's very good. He's 5,500 over on FanDuel, but I want to get to a little bit. But by far the priority, Emmanuel Quickly, lock button. Get as much as you humanly possibly can here. I'm just flying trying to get this in. This is just going to be a sweat. Go ahead. Keep going.
The quick button on Lockley works just as well as the lock button on Quickly. So you got to go one way or the other there.
Terry, I love your face. I just love you. It's just beautiful.
I'm with you on that. And RJ Barrett, 5,500 and 5,600 across sites is definitely interesting there. Like I said earlier, I think it could just be a situation where Tibbs just gives him the keys to the offense here and just says, hey, kid, you're our number 2. You were our big draft pick. You're the kid we're developing here to take the reins eventually. Let's see what you can do out there as the featured guy. He's delivered 0.81 fantasy points per minute for the season, 49.8% true shooting. These are uninspiring numbers, but with a lot to do at that price, he could definitely deliver some value for us here. So I don't hate that.
All right. I got it in. I have 100% on every site. Now we'll be able to figure it out. Whew, this is a great time to make money again. You didn't want to lose some of those roster spots, and I'm sure I'll get a little less Trey Young over on FanDuel as a result, which I'm okay with. I'm still gonna have a lot of Trey Young on that site for sure, but that's my only spot that I'm really getting to Trey Young. Terry, what a lie before lock. I'm gonna close it with this. So text $5 super chat. Thanks to all at Team Awesemo for a great year's worth of content and entertainment. Happy New Year's, Eric, Terry, and everyone else. Cheers to 2022. Terry, lovely way to kind of head out of here. Any final words for the people in 2021?
Oh, have a very happy new year, everybody. We look forward to seeing you at and around the site in 2022. A whole hell of a lot of winning coming up next year. Stay tuned tomorrow. We've got some interesting promos coming out for the New Year's. I'll just tease that. Happy New Year, everybody. Stay safe tonight.
Guys, stay safe. Have a blast. Guys, this has been an incredible year. Thank you so much to Tyler Zander there behind the virtual glass. Even if he ended up trolling me about Alabama not just doing Alabama things and Cincinnati not covering for me, just literally not losing by a zillion, but they did it anyway. I've had an amazing year. I can't tell you guys thank you enough. Even the people that are out there that make my life entertaining. I love the positivity, but you know what? The negativity reminds me that, we're all working hard towards the end goal, which is happiness. I hope you are all so happy in 2022. Best of luck to you. Terry, thank you so much. I'm Eric Lindquist. We're out of here for 2021.